All right, I'm going to go ahead and call to order this meeting of the Santa Barbara School Board, the Board of Education for September 20th, 2014. And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Cash.
Please stand. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Buenas noches. Si hay alguien quien desee escuchar esta junta o la interpretación de esta junta esta noche, tenemos los aparatos disponibles por esas puertas dobles, si es que así lo desean. Gracias.
Thank you. And we do also have headsets available for the hearing impaired. They're available from the side table over here if anybody needs that. That brings us to item C5, introductions, proclamations, presentations, or recognitions. Dr. Cash.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Sadly, we need to start our meeting tonight as our school community mourns the death of 17-year-old former student Sam Osterhage. Sam attended Washington, La Colina, Dos Pueblos, and Alta Vista, and our condolences go out to his family, the community in Santa Barbara, his friends. So please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. October is National Dyslexia Awareness Month, and we're going to be doing quite a few things. We'll be acknowledging it in several ways. Our October sign at the La Cumbre Plaza will focus on dyslexia. A resolution in support of dyslexia will be on our next board meeting's agenda, and the topic will be addressed in our Parent Resource Center discussion series along with a presentation on assistive technology. Additionally, on October 7th at 9 a.m., County Supervisor Salud Carbajal will declare October as Dyslexia Awareness Month in Santa Barbara County and be presenting that resolution to our district. We are being recognized for our efforts in the classroom, in the community, and specifically with our Parent Resource Center. I'd like to tonight call the board's attention to the incredible efforts of our Dos Pueblos High School team of bilingual students who served as interpreters at back-to-school nights throughout our community. It's very inspiring to know that we have 50 bilingual students that volunteered to help at 4 junior high schools, 4 elementary schools, and also at Dos Pueblos High School. And they were featured in today's edition of E!News. This Saturday, Santa Barbara High School's Vocal Music Department will host Music in the Meadow in Santa Barbara High School's Meadow, and that will be at 7:30 p.m. So if you enjoy hearing music from popular musicals and movies, Santa Barbara High School students invite you to attend. It's a fundraiser for the choral group, so tickets are $10, and the funds will be used to support this year's field trips for Santa Barbara High School singers. Finally, Santa Barbara High School will also be performing Big Fish on November 13th, 14th, 15th, and 16th. And our office is gathering all the information on our fall productions, and we'll have more detailed information about every high school and junior high school's fall production at our next board meeting. And that concludes the superintendent's report. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to board comments and correspondence. Board members, anything that you need to share? Dr. Paz?
So last week I had the opportunity to go to one of our open houses, La Colina, and saw Assistant Superintendent Margaret Christensen there. It was really well put together. And then I had an opportunity to go to visit some of the classrooms, and gave me another perspective yet again of how our schools are working, and all the teachers did a really fantastic job. So the 2 teachers that I had the opportunity to observe, and it's great. I hope that they didn't mind me being in their classroom. I know one of them knew that I was a board member. The other one probably had no idea what I was doing. But so it was great. Just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Mr. Herron.
A few things. It's very nice. We very often take a moment for students or people that are current passing away. But some of you can't relate to this, but I'm starting to read obituaries on a regular basis. And it's amazing the number of times I see people who have passed away who were so important to the school district over the years. And a person who just passed away who used to work for me 40 years ago, Bob Bates. I was interested to read that for 22 years he was a teacher at Dos Pueblos. And his topics were government, how important being involved with government and your community. And to read the stories about him from former students, it just, reflecting back on all the people that affect our kids over the years, it's just absolutely tremendous, and we sometimes forget everything that they've done in the past. But Bob Bates was a special man. Day of Caring took place by United Way last Saturday, and the opening event, again, the Dos Pueblos marching drums came, the drum corps came bouncing in, followed by the San Marcos choral group, Madrigal Singers, and then the SBCC cheerleaders. And then that was followed by a Zumba teacher. And the place was rocking by the time the hour was up. It was quite a morning. And I didn't get to go to all 11 of our schools, but we did have 11 schools participating that day. I went to La Cumbre, Monroe, OAS, Peabody, Adams, and Dos Pueblos. And all had special things going on. But I'll have to give a special shout out to Monroe, who is probably my ideal of how it is done. Very well organized, very well stated as what jobs had to be done. As the people came from the squash club or wherever they came from United Way, they just signed up for something and went to work. But also the number of parents and family members that was at Monroe. It was a truly family morning of the people at the school taking care of its campus from the front to the far reaches throughout, including the garden, where the head gardener, the gardener instructor was there. Adams was also the same thing. You walk in and Rotary had taken over the organization, and they do a great job. And they also had a list where teachers signed up for projects, and they had people working throughout the campus. I went to OAS, and that was a delight. The new principal there has cleaned house. I mean, the place is now looking fantastic. I remember 6 years ago going there, and it looked like a third world country. But they've cleaned it up tremendously, very presentable. Their attendance is way up, and I think thanks to maybe the school district and you, Dr. Cash, but they're very happy with 2 new classes added to their normal workload. The 2 new classrooms don't have Apple TVs, just a hint. But the teacher in that classroom was just fantastic. She just bounced. I mean, she was really good. So I see a great, great change in OAS, and I was very happy to report that. I went to the Santa Barbara Charter Board meeting last week, and unfortunately there wasn't a quorum, so they couldn't actually hold a meeting. But we did chat about a lot of things, and they are really making an effort at diversification. They're really trying hard. They went to the health fair at Bonnet Park, I think it was, yeah. And they also have a van now that are picking up and taking home 3 children into the Santa Barbara area, which was part of the admonition we gave them. So they're trying really hard. And they had a good year fiscally, too, so they're happy about that. I also went to the parent resource room for the weekly discussion last Thursday night, and unfortunately I was the only one there. There were no parents, and there were multiple reasons for that. It was back to school night, so that eliminates some, but they did report that the phone system, the automatic parent notification system, isn't working, and for some reason, and that the I asked about assistive technology since that was the topic, and they haven't been very successful in getting the iPad out and working. And in fact, I think the mention was they've only done 2. And there's multiple reasons for that. So I'm hoping technology is working on the iPads, and I hope that somebody is working on the phone system so we get parent notifications out. But that ends my report. It was a good week, a good 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Dimon.
And on that note, Ms. Idelson, myself, Dr. Cash, were all at the health fair on the west side 2 Saturdays ago. There were over 300 screenings, over 1,000 people attended, and And kudos to Dr. Patricia Madrigal, who did a tremendous effort. We were all very lucky, those of us that were there, that got to award either bikes or really nice laptops to several students from our district. So that was very exciting, and I always have to remind people that part of the reason that our school district engages in work outside of the classroom is because we know that healthy students have a better time in the classroom. They learn, and that's very important to us. So kudos to the district, great effort, and I'm looking forward to next year's.
Great. All right, with that, we're going to move on to C8. That's announcement of closed session action. We did not take any action in closed session. We will be talking about B2, which was the request for petition for readmission, a little bit later on the action agenda. And then we're at C9, public comments on non-agenda matters within jurisdiction of the Board of Education. Mr. Herron?
We have 3 requests. I'll read the names, and if you come to the podium and give your comments. William Warner, followed by Elizabeth MacArthur, followed by Gisela Cosmerol. So, William Warner, can you come to the podium? You have 3 minutes, and I will give you a 30-second warning.
Okay, I'll get my iPad. Oh, never mind, I'll leave me time. My name is Bill Warner. I teach at UCSB in the English department, but I started my teaching at the Los Angeles City School District, teaching 6th grade for 2 years. And so I feel like not only have I devoted my life to education, but I appreciate how difficult education is at every level. I currently have an 8th grader at GV named Emma, and she's in, and my concern is with Common Core and the way it's being implemented, its design. There are real problems with it, and I hope that we can move towards having public comment on this and have it be on the agenda so there can be a full airing of the problems that have already manifested itself with Common Core. First, I want to honor your public service because I know how much work you've been involved in. But many of us at this meeting, or at least some of us at this meeting, feel that a terrible mistake has been made in implementing Common Core precipitously in Santa Barbara. And it's the way it's been implemented that produces real problems. The key factor is that for students at the very highest level and the medium high level, in other words, the top 50% of students who are taking Algebra 1 in 7th and 8th grade and passing either with advanced or proficiency their tests, those students are being made to wait from 1 to 2 years, depend on the courses they take, to get the concepts in Algebra 1 that they should have been having at an earlier age, and that people around the country and indeed around the world are doing. We have others, I think, will talk about this in a more specific way, but we have a huge, big elephant in the room on this. And we saw it when we came a few weeks back and saw these huge booklets with the Common Core in it. There are no textbooks for implementing this in Santa Barbara right now. My daughter comes home with worksheets that have been downloaded from the web by her very capable teacher, but the worksheets are full of mistakes. And when I asked both people at the school board meeting and at, my wife asked after school night, the students, the teachers verified that this has been a huge burden for them. But it's crucial, if you're really serious about helping your student in math, that you can open a textbook and with her and review a concept that she didn't get in class, either because of a substitute. Right, thank you. And I think that the name, two final points. You say commitment to excellence is part of your mission statement. I think if you review the way Common Core is being implemented, we're taking a step back rather than forward. We've made a ceiling for achievement into a floor. And the slogan should be not "No Child Left Behind," which I think is a noble ambition, but "No child allowed to get ahead."
And what's your second point? Or is that what did you?
That's the second point.
Thank you.
No child is allowed to get ahead.
Elizabeth MacArthur.
So I also am Bill's wife, and so I have an 8th grader at GV, also an 11th grader at DP. Common Core math is deeply flawed. It is not internationally benchmarked. In fact, students who follow the Common Core math curriculum will finish high school 1 or 2 years behind students from high-achieving nations. Common Core math is not evidence-based. It has never been tested to see if it is more effective than California's previous standards. Instead, our students and their teachers are testing it right now. Unfortunately, the results of that experiment will only become apparent when our students take their Smarter Balanced tests at the end of 11th grade, at which point their college and career options will already have been foreshortened. Common Core math will not prepare students for competitive four-year colleges and for careers in STEM-related fields. It will only prepare students for community college unless they take the poorly named compaction track. Students on that track will be made to tread water from 7th through 9th grades, only to rush for 2 years at exactly the time when students have the most rigorous academic schedules in 10th and 11th grades. The rollout of Common Core math has been even more deeply flawed. Our 7th and 8th grade math classes have no textbooks, which forces every teacher to become the author of a textbook, as well as the teacher of a brand new curriculum. The district has not created a complete description of what each class will do this year, much less tested whether this new curriculum will be effective, much less trained teachers in how to use the new materials successfully. The rollout has been, frankly, an embarrassment. What should we do? Best of all would be to repeal Common Core math, but that would require action at the state level. The next best option would be to delay implementation of the Common Core until it can be field tested and until textbooks can be purchased and teachers can be trained in the new curricula and in the new methods of teaching. At the very least, our district should allow advanced students to move through the curriculum more quickly, rather than freezing them in a holding pattern like airplanes waiting to land. In Santa Barbara County in 2013, 89% of the 7th graders who took the STAR test in Algebra 1 earned scores of advanced or proficient, 89%. For 8th graders, 70% were advanced or proficient. The total number of students who mastered Algebra 1 in our county in 2013 was about 278 7th graders and 1,424 8th graders. We should not force those almost 1,700 students every year to delay their study of Algebra 1. The 8th graders who
30 seconds.
Thank you. The 8th graders who were succeeding in Algebra 1 in the past should be taking Integrated Math 1 this year. The most advanced 7th graders should also be taking Integrated Math 1. The advanced 7th graders should be continuing on to Integrated Math 2 in 8th grade. Otherwise, we will be shortchanging our most successful math students. Thank you.
Thank you. Gisela Kamaral.
Hello. I'll be talking about the same thing. My name is Gisela Komarel, and I'm the mother of a 7th grader at La Colina Junior High School. I'm addressing you tonight as one of many parents who are unhappy with the implementation of Common Core math at La Colina. There is a group of students in 7th grade, my daughter among them, who have been working above grade level for years and have covered most of the 7th grade content in elementary school. This group is not well served by the Common Core Plus enrichment classes, which essentially follow the same curriculum as the other 2 levels of Common Core math. I am very disappointed that despite the concerns voiced by several of you, nothing is currently offered at La Colina for this group of students who have a keen interest and higher abilities in math. In the past, as you know, the best math learners were able to test out of pre-algebra and move straight into Algebra 1 in 7th grade, continuing with geometry at the junior high school in 8th grade. A similar path is not in place at La Colina at the moment. I would like to ask why, unlike many other school districts that have adopted Common Core, such as, for example, Ventura and including Georgia schools who are following the very same curriculum, Santa Barbara does not offer a compacted pathway for math in junior high school. Offering such a compacted path would allow the highest math learners to study the materials at a pace that is appropriate to them. It is irresponsible, in my opinion, to prevent eager learners from moving at a pace that engages and stimulates them. Not only will this be a handicap for those who want to pursue a career in the STEM fields, but there is in fact research to show that holding students to a pace that is too slow for them can seriously interfere with their learning. We are asking for a compacted pathway for the most advanced math learners that will cover the content of 7th and 8th grade by the end of 7th grade and offer a Math 1 class on-site at La Colina next year. To be clear, we do not suggest skipping any part of the curriculum, but compacting 3 years into 2. Thank you for listening to my concerns.
Thank you. That completes public comment.
Great, and obviously we won't be able to talk about that particular matter tonight, but I do want parents in the room to know that, of course, district staff are always happy to talk to you about any issues that are currently coming up, and we will be having a full discussion about this at our second meeting in October. And with that, we will move on to...
Is it all okay to say, in the meantime, changes are being made?
Yes, and I don't know if Dr. Cash, if you want to address that right now, or if you want to...
Yeah, changes are being made.
Thank you.
I just wanted the public to know that.
Okay. That moves us to item D, acceptance of donations.
Move for acceptance with gratitude.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Aye. That passed unanimously. Thank you. Then we have the consent agenda. Are there any items that need to be pulled? Mr. Herron?
I'd like to pull E2 and E3. And I do have a question on E6 that if they want to answer now, fine, or we can wait until the end.
Why don't we, since we're going to wait till the end anyway,
Okay.
let's just do E6 at the end as well. So we are pulling E2, E3, and E6. And E2 is approval of staff travel. E3 is approval of the agreement for professional learning services between Santa Barbara Unified and To Teach LLC. And then item E6 is the human resources recommendations. So without those on the consent agenda, do I have a motion?
I move approval of the consent agenda with the exclusion of E2, E3, and E6.
Second.
Second.
And it was moved by Ms. Idelson, seconded by Dr. Paz. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. That also passed unanimously, and we'll come back to those items at the end of the meeting. We do not have any public hearings today, which brings us to the action agenda. G1 is board action on the request for petition for readmission of an expelled student. Dr. Cash, is there anything that you want to say about that before we take action?
No.
All right.
I'll move the petition for reentry from expulsion in case number 2012-13-12.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Herron and seconded by Ms. Idelson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passed unanimously. G2, approval of the Visual and Performing Arts, otherwise known as VAPA, strategic plan. Dr. Cash.
Thank you very much, Thank you very much, Madam President. This strategic plan has been before you several times. You've seen it as a conference item. And I kind of debated whether I'd want to go through, since it's been out in the public for over a year and a half. I'm happy to go through the salient sections of it with you. Or I can simply take questions from you. Before we start, I do want to remind you that one of the things that's important to recall is that the strategic plan was written in the context of the idea that it would be a dynamic document, would not be static, that this would be the draft that we would want to seek input from you on. And if there are substantive changes, we'd go back to the Visual and Performing Arts Planning Committee with those changes. And knowing that really one of the most essential elements in the strategic plan kind of hinges on whether or not the district adopts, the board approves the adoption of a job description for a coordinator, and whether or not that position is funded through our alliance with the Santa Barbara, our agreement with the Santa Barbara Arts Alliance. So the elements of the strategic plan are those that we've discussed before. I think the key components of it that's important to remember are that what it does is it provides for a coordinated effort, grades K through 12. It focuses on providing all students with a consistent experience and opportunity in all parts of visual and performing arts. And in particular, one of the areas that, as I've shared at other board meetings, that's been difficult is the junior high area in relationship to the plan calls out for every student having essentially a non-auditioned visual and performing arts experience or class while they're in school. And they, for example, call it possibly period 0 or 7. We believe that as we fully develop our partnership with the Arts Alliance and the arts community, that opportunities to ensure that every student that wants to have that in a non-audition setting, and what I mean by that is that they didn't try out to be a star in the play, or they didn't audition to be in the band. They're just going to have an experience in visual and performing arts. That with our alliance and our partnerships with all the community agencies, we think we'd be able to provide some sort of continuum of services. Right now, very frankly, we just don't have the capacity internally to be able to ensure that that's going to occur unless we stop doing something else. So with that, I'd take any questions that you may have.
Dr. Paz.
You know, one of the points that we have talked about before when briefly, in terms of doing this is actually, as you spoke, Dr. Cash, about sort of the sustainability of the next item that's up on the agenda, which is the coordinator position. So related to that, when I look at the plan, and you look at 3.21, 3.22, they almost seem at odds to a point. Because 3.21 says establish a VAPA community contribution campaign to include participation by VAPA district stakeholders. 3.22, first bullet says every year attempt to add parcel tax supported VAPA FTEs to the district's general fund. So we're either doing one, or we're doing the other, or we're doing a combination of both. And that's not very clear if you look at 3.21, 3.22. I would love to see that a little more detailed out. We need to get a better sense of what that means. Where does one transition? Where does the other one begin? How does that work? And I look at it in terms of we have added a number of positions because the local control accountability plan, one particular. We're looking at other things in the future, and I think it would be for a board for us to really look at the future and try to get a grasp of sort of our future expenses, how these two would interact with each other in order to sustain this position if we're going to go in that direction. So that would be my comment. Thank you.
One of the things that we are currently in the process of, hopefully one of two very important tasks that we're trying to complete sooner than later, is trying to put together a proposed plan in relationship to the current programs and services that are paid for out of the parcel taxes, as to what that would look like in the long term if there were no parcel taxes. I think that's a responsible thing to do. And that, until we actually kind of get to the whole LCAP conversation again, which will be sometime probably in the springtime, I don't know that I would be able to answer your question with any sort of detail. I mean, I plan to bring forward a proposal prior to then, because I think the board should have an opportunity to have a conversation about that prior to long in advance of having to make specific LCAP decisions. I'm also going to bring forward a proposal on how we can maintain our facilities as well over the long haul. But you're right, both of those things are intimately related to board decisions in relationship to the LCAP. I mean, I can attempt to answer those questions, but I don't know if I can answer them.
I think more than anything, I think you're somewhat answering, and what I'm looking for is to have a wider discussion about these 2 points, because I think they are at this point in time, as they're stated right now, somewhat at odds, because I do feel that doing one or the other may preclude one or the other taking place to a smaller or lesser degree, depending on what comes before the other. So if we have 3.22 occurring before 3.21, does that mean there's less of a burden to do 3.21? And maybe not. Maybe there's 3.21 addressing certain other aspects other than employees that may take place.
I think the latter is exactly the direction that we would go.
Okay. So I think that's what I would like to see more of. Either we have a wider discussion, we don't do a final adoption of this until we have that more clearly in place. I don't know. I feel like that would be a better way of understanding this, even for someone else picking this up after today, that they would understand, oh, I get it. See, I see the school district is going in this direction. This is how they're planning to fund this. Because short of that, it's really hard. It may end up being any of those on the side right there where it says source, parcel tax, grant funding, general fund, unrestricted category, community contribution, any of those could be the source for that, for any of those areas.
Correct.
So that would be my request.
Mr. Herron?
I'll make clear that I don't see a relationship necessarily between 3.2.1 and 3.2.2. As far as I'm concerned, 3.2.2 stands on its own with the assumption that we will not have a parcel tax, and that everything else has to be focused around that. If we can get community participation, contributions from the public, campaign for the public, Santa Barbara Education Foundation, whatever. But in my mind, parcel taxes are off the table. And so that has to come first of all those items.
Dr. Paz?
If I'm reading this, and I'm just the person in the public reading this, 3.21, and I'm reading down like you would, how does that one not relate to that one? If that one occurs, then does that 3.22 not occur?
In my opinion, if you don't have community contributions, that's okay, you don't have it. But 3.2.2, we are going to establish a plan where what is provided by parcel taxes now will be provided by the general fund going forward.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is that for anyone else trying to understand this and where the money is going to come from, and whether it's going to be from us taking up that position in the general fund, part of what we fund, or whether it's going to come from a contribution as part of this plan, then why would we even have 3.21 if we don't even want to talk about it?
It's always
Mr.
good to
Ryan?
have community contributions for a multitude of things in the arts.
True.
We're always going to depend upon community contributions to help us in the field of the arts. The question purely is
But we've had this discussion. I would beg to disagree, because we've had this discussion when we've had discussions on this board, when we talk about how we're going to fund facilities, for example. We've had very much the same discussions about facilities that we're having about this particular position and how to fund that particular position, because we always talk about, well, is it going to be, if there's money on the table, do we take it? If there's no money on the table, do we not take it? So I would beg to disagree that we have had discussions about this, and that we should have that very clearly defined, as we do with our facilities.
And I'm going to take it in a slightly different direction, but on the same 3.2.2. And I want to be clear that we as a board have not discussed and we have not voted on whether or not there's going to be a parcel tax in the future. And so I think it's really important that this not be worded the way it is, because we cannot tie the hands of a future board. And so I would suggest a wording change in that instead of it being create a plan for VAPA sustainability once parcel tax dollars have expired, instead it says create a plan for VAPA sustainability if parcel tax dollars expire. So we can move forward with the idea, which I think is a great one, of having it come on to into the main district budget. But all it's going to take, and this is why I both appreciate this strategic plan in general, but I also appreciate the parcel tax, because it's the next recession, which will hit again, when funding is cut. It's arts that get hit first. And you know what it was like here as we were faced with such dismay in the community as we were talking about cutting the arts. And the parcel tax protected the arts. It's ironclad protection for the arts. And a strategic plan is not ironclad. And so I'm always afraid that, I hope that things are okay in 2 years when the parcel tax winds down, the current parcel tax winds down, that it's not something that we have to go back out for. But in 4 years, we may have to go back out for it. And so I want to be sure that this plan doesn't bind a future board. If that's, if it's between not being able to do the strategic plan at all because a recession has hit and our budget's been decimated again, I don't want the public to go back and say, well, you said that this was going to expire. And so I'd like to put an element of, this is for a future board discussion, a future agenda. Dr. Paz?
And I guess that's my point I'm trying to make, is that I want to make sure that we're clear about that we look at ourselves in the future, as I started my points, to say, how is this going to play out in the future? Because when we don't have that clarity, I think it gets to your point, which is no clarity, no sense of what really, maybe the board said this. Well, the board went in that direction without fully knowing what it was doing, so it does tie a future board in a direction, either at 3.21 or at 3.22, and I want to be sure that we're clear about what is it that we're saying at the end of the day.
All right, so we've had a lot to say about 3.22. I've made some wording changes on that, or suggested changes on that, but there's a lot of other points here. Any other comments, or if anybody wants to chime in on this particular one as well? Ms. Limon?
So I wasn't planning on commenting on this, but since it's a matter of discussion, it's really interesting because I think I didn't read any of it as binding, period. I feel like our strategic plan has not been binding. We've changed words as we've reviewed it. I also read 3.22 as a great goal. There's nothing wrong with having a goal of saying, let's make a plan once tax dollars expire. And I didn't see the current language as being kind of legal or contractual language that would bind anyone. I also keep looking at the source and kind of think that my reading of it indicates that it's going to be all a combination or a few of those that might be funding the position. I don't know if this is the time to talk about the position because the position actually comes up in our next agenda item. But generally speaking, my comments about the whole plan is that I'm supportive of it. I think these are good goals. Like our strategic plans, I think they're big goals, and I don't know that we can do everything that we'd like to do and sustain it through 2018, but I am supportive of at least trying to move forward with the plan and language that we have in place through 2018. I did have a question about number 3, which is strong family and community engagement, and I just wanted I was looking for an example of what that looked like in the arts. What are we thinking, like, I didn't know if that meant coming more to school events, supporting more in financial and non-monetary ways. Does it mean classes? I don't know what that necessarily
I think it means all of those things. I think El Sistema is a great example of that, to be very frank. In the music, in the performing arts area, in the visual arts area, I very much see classes in which parents and students are contributing to the same piece of art. So I don't see it just as, here, write me a check and let's get going. I see it as really much more of a collaboration in the arts. We have some really good examples that are unfortunately not connected. I think of the Primetime Band that is filled with lots of people in our community, a lot of former educators, quite frankly, that are in it, that practice and play. And I think there needs to be greater connection with those kinds of institutions that already exist in our community, that have our parents in our community involved with our current programs.
Thank you. And just one other comment. I think there's some really great ideas on here, and I won't go into each one of them, but I would hope that these are opportunities that are accessible for all students and aren't either outsourced in ways that financial means would prohibit people from being involved. I think that, I see a VAPA Summer Bridge program, and I'm like, oh, is that going to be something that's going to be like other programs we have, where if you have means, you're able to participate, not district programs, but other programs in the community. So I would hope that, again, I see these as lofty, great goals that I'm supportive of, but my hope is that a lot of this could be accessible to all of our students in our district. So, yeah, and all, not just economically disadvantaged, but also students who don't have electives and can't take part of this in their regular schedule.
Thank you. Ms. Idelson.
I second that. I think we're very fortunate, our community, that we've come, have given this a priority. And I think through the parcel tax, we definitely have an indicator that, the community is behind us. And I think the more organized we are in implementing these programs, the better off, the districts will be, for sure, and for the students' benefit.
Any other comments on this one? All right, it is on for action. I have suggested a slight wording change to 3.22. And I look at this, I absolutely agree with you, Ms. Limon, as our strategic plan, that it is something that's adaptable as things change. And so I personally am willing to go ahead and take action on it tonight with that understanding.
And we have the video that anyone can go back and watch now. So.
But are you saying go ahead as is written, or?
I would prefer if 3.2.2 said create a plan, because we have just not discussed parcel tax dollars and any expiration of the parcel tax. And so I feel like even starting off that we need to make that change, that it says create a plan for VAPA sustainability if parcel tax dollars expire.
The bottom line is they will expire in 2016. And if we don't start now planning for it, we're going to be stuck 2 years from now having to make a decision with no money. And so if we need to start, it's going away. And we need to plan as if it's not there. I don't think we can say if it's not there, because as of the moment, it's not there, and it won't be there unless some future board takes action.
I'm trying to think of a good way to clarify, because
this just says every year attempt to add parcel tax to the general fund so that it no longer is susceptible to being cut just because arts and music happen to be the low on the totem pole. They are an integral part of everything we should be doing, and they shouldn't be looked upon as something extra because of parcel tax. And I think we need to plan that they are part of our program with money we will have in 2018 and work on the basis that we don't have to go back to the public for a parcel tax. And it says attempt. If we can't do it, that's a different story.
I guess in thinking about a more clearer wording, I would suggest a change that says create a plan for VAPA sustainability. Period. And then eliminate the line that says once parcel tax dollars have expired. It goes on to bullet what we're doing, which is attempting to add parcel tax supported VAPA FTEs to the district's general fund. And I think that that's reasonable.
Good.
So I will make a motion to go ahead and approve the VAPA strategic plan with the change noted to 3.22 stating create a plan for VAPA sustainability.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that passed unanimously. Thank you. Which brings us to the related topic. This is item G3, approval of job description for Coordinator 2, Visual and Performing Arts Coordinator. Dr. Cash?
Dr. Christensen will take the lead on this one.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Cash. The approval of the job description for the Coordinator 2 was on conference last time. It is coming back to you per your request with the adjustments that were requested to the job description itself. I welcome any questions that you have.
Board members?
Is this where we get to discuss funding and plan for this position? Yes or no? I don't.
I think that it's acceptable to do that. Yes, I think that we can do that here. Because we're approving the position, so you can talk about funding for the position.
So, Dr. Cash, can you tell us anything about the funding for this position?
Yeah, we're currently working with a group of committed arts nonprofits and funders. We hope to enter into a memorandum of understanding with this group that they would provide the funding for the first 3 years of this position, essentially, with the understanding that if funding still exists and it remains a district priority, that the district would assume funding for the position after 3 years.
Thank you.
Ms. Edelson?
So then the position would not be offered unless that funding comes forward that you're describing?
Right now, yes. There's no funding in the budget to make it happen. We'd have to bring forward the budget and modify the budget in order to do so. It was not part of the LCAP.
Ms. Limon?
So essentially, should this board approve this position right now, this board is committing the district to this position for more than 3 years. Is that correct?
Well, you're going to need to approve the memorandum of understanding between the district and the Santa Barbara Arts Alliance or the Santa Barbara Ed Foundation. I'm not sure exactly what agency is going to take the lead in it. And then you'd have an opportunity at that particular point to really make that decision. Approving the position just gives us an opportunity to move further down the pipeline, advertise, look for candidates.
So just to be clear, tonight we're approving the position, the MOU will come forward, and once we've solidified the potential funding, there will be action as far as recruiting for the position. So we're not necessarily recruiting for the position tonight, we're just approving it, and then the next step is the MOU, then going out to recruit.
Yes.
Okay.
It's the first step on our process. You'll soon see the MOU, I predict, at the first meeting in October.
Dr. Paz?
Do we have anyone in the district similarly funded right now?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So we could take a similar approach to that individual or individuals.
Mr. Herron?
I'd just like to thank staff. I had made some suggestions and changes, and most of them I see were included. So I appreciate that very much. I did have one question. Throughout this document, or in this document, it talks about instruction by highly qualified VAPA teachers. Is there a definition for what is a highly qualified VAPA teacher?
In this case, what we would want is to have a person with a bachelor's degree with a major in the visual or performing arts, or a closely related field, to be highly qualified to teach.
And that's across the
Visual
board in
performing arts.
all of our classes?
Yes.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that we necessarily are able to fill all positions with highly qualified teachers, because there are certain positions that are hard to fill. I don't anticipate that that will be the case with this position.
Okay. And remind me again, what did you just say as far as the definition? What would they have to hold?
They would have to have or be able to hold an administrative credential, which also requires that they have a credential in one of the visual or performing arts, a teaching credential.
Now, are you talking about the director position, or are you talking about the teacher on staff at a school?
I'm talking about this position.
But I'm talking about the definition here that all students have VAPA instruction by highly qualified VAPA teachers.
That they would have the credential in the appropriate field for the classes that they're teaching.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
thank you.
Can I ask you, Dr. Christensen, off the top of your head, what is the top of the range for an experienced teacher in our district?
I don't have it off the top of my head.
But wouldn't it be somewhere in the 80,000s or
Yes.
so? Yeah. Because my only concern when I look at this in terms of our experienced teachers, who, if it were somebody coming from any district, we would want them to be very experienced, is that it's 225 days, and it's starting at about 80,000. So, I mean, it could conceivably, you could look at this as a pay cut to go to work more days. And I hope that that's not the way it works out, but I am certainly thinking about that in terms of recruitment, because they're going to be working significantly longer than the 180 days of or 185 days of a standard teaching contract. But, that's something that I think that we would see in terms of who ends up applying, and something that we might need to think about.
Yes, and we have some flexibility on where we place them also on the salary schedule.
Okay. Any other comments? This is on for action.
I will move to approve the Coordinator 2 Visual and Performing Arts position.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passed unanimously. Thank you. All right, so Dr. Christensen does not get to go away. We have item G4, approval of variable term waivers for single subject in adaptive PE, administrative services, and math. Dr. Cash, I don't know if you want to say anything before.
Well, this is an annual item, one that's before the board in relationship to ensuring that the board understands that we're working with all of our teachers to ensure that they have the appropriate credentials, or they are housed, which is I think the technical term Mr. Herron was referring to for highly qualified.
Mr. Herron.
Both these two, Samantha Stewart and Deborah Grant, we did the renewals. We did the same thing last year. Now with Ms. Stewart, it looks like she's in a credential program. So is that something that's ongoing for several years in that program, or when will she likely finish the program and become qualified?
I will have to get back to you and give you exactly when she anticipates finishing the program.
Okay. And Deborah Grant, last year was exactly the same. She was going to take the leadership exam in February of 14, and it's only given 3 times, according to this, and also last year. Obviously, those 3 times came and went, and she didn't evidently take the test. Is her plan to take it soon?
She will be taking the examination.
At one of these next 3?
She will be taking, yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. This is another one that we need action on. Dr. Paz?
I move to approve the variable term waivers for single subject, adaptive PE, administrative services, and math.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
This brings us to item G. This is denial of developer fee fund request. Dr. Cash.
Thank you very much, Madam President. As board members recall, in August, this matter was before the board. Legal opinion was obtained by counsel. Subsequently, the owner of 1123 Manitou Road submitted additional documents that were also forwarded to counsel, Craig Price, who's here tonight, and he provided the district and the board with a second opinion in relationship to that. And our recommendation is to currently continue to deny the developer fee refund. Mr. Price is here, available to answer any questions should board members have any.
Do we have any public comment on this?
No. I don't believe. No.
Board questions on this? Mr. Herron?
Is it a fact that we're getting paid for the same thing twice? Part of it, the $5,000 some, we got it once. Now we're asking for it again for the exact, in essence, the exact same thing?
Yes. Mr. Price.
Almost the exact same thing. The home that was permitted in 2005 was a different size home. It was larger. And the developer fees at that time were significantly less than they are now, 9 years later. But I think the tone of your question is whether or not the district is being paid a developer fee twice for a structure that has yet still to be built.
That is my...
That's true.
That's my question, and
That's correct.
And all the rights, as I understand your memos, all of the rights that the first developer had were transferred to the second developer. Lot split costs, fees, permits, everything, including our development fee, evidently, were transferred to the new buyer. Is that correct?
Whatever rights the seller had were transferred to the buyer, to Mr. Hansen. However, the fact that somebody assigns their right to another person doesn't mean that the right is still alive. And in this case, as a legal matter, the fact that Mr. Hansen now has his predecessor's right does not serve to revive that right, which long ago expired, but leaving it nevertheless to the discretion of the board, because you're not barred by the prohibition of gift of public funds if you wish to not basically enforce the statute of limitations.
I've been brought up always with the conflict of, do you do the right thing or do you do things right? Doing things right and legal, there's one solution. Doing what is right. In my opinion, we're not a body that should be double charging somebody for something. So I'm going to vote for the appeal because I think it's the right thing to do. I don't think we're here to take extra money from our citizenship.
I would, just to follow up on your comment, at the very end of my memo, I cited a case, and maybe just taking a minute, that's instructive. That was the Mitchell case from 1957, and in that case, a returning war veteran from the Second World War sought to obtain the premiums on some bonds from a public agency, and due to his absence on account of the war and his service, he had not been able or in a position to do anything about it. And the auditor of Los Angeles County said, we cannot pay this because the statute of limitations is expired. And the court said, no, that's not true. In this situation where the board wishes to authorize a refund, it has the capability of doing so because they have the option as to whether or not to exert the statute of limitations. And in that case, the board found that there was plenty of good reason to do so. I think part of your inquiry here is whether or not there is any reason for board members to believe that the failure over a period of 9 years to seek a refund is really excusable. We don't know why a refund wasn't sought. All we know is that the former owner who paid the developer fee 9 years ago sold the property, and now we have somebody coming in on his heels that wants to get a credit for something that was long ago expired. So I think part of the inquiry is there any adequate justification in this particular case under the facts? But you have total discretion in the matter.
And I think I want to follow up on that because you want to do what is right, but what is right? So any owner who puts in that they're going to develop and pays developer fees, if they end up not building, do they have the right to come to this district and say, I want a refund because I'm not building this after all?
They do, as long as they do so in a timely way.
Okay.
And the statutes
So
clarify.
the previous owner had that ability and did not do it. When did that previous owner transfer his rights to Mr. Hansen?
He transferred those rights the end of last year,
So
years after the time
was it
to
part,
file
may
a
may I just
protest.
ask, was it part of the property transfer, or was it a separate transaction?
Based on the documentation that's been submitted, there's no indication that it was part of the sale of the property. It appears as though after the district at the staff level turned down the request for a refund, that contact was made with the seller and a document prepared, which you've seen, that contains an assignment of the right to any credit. In other words, after the fact.
Because I would personally hope, obviously, that anybody who doesn't build comes to the district and gets a refund on the money that they themselves have spent. But what I said at the last meeting when we agreed that this would come onto this agenda was that the issue was that Mr. Hansen himself had actually not spent any money. It was the previous owner's money that was spent, and if he were to come forward directly and want a refund even 9 years later, then to me that's maybe a discussion to have, even though it's long past the time that he should have done it. And if we did it, I'm sure it's opening a huge can of worms, because we could have people from 15, 20 years ago saying, hey, wasn't there something in that drawer that that we didn't deal with, that we should have dealt with in a timely manner? So I'm really concerned about that. I'm also really concerned then that any time a sale goes through and somebody hasn't dealt with it, then 4 or 5 years later they could go forward and say, here's a slip of paper, I'm signing this over to you, and maybe you can get a refund on money that I spent. So to me, I don't know that it's right to give taxpayers' money back to somebody who didn't spend it in the first place. So that's my concern with it, and that's probably why I would vote to deny the fee request.
And in addition, it would also raise the question, when the next person comes before you who has not made a timely request for a refund, how you differentiate among these cases. Because they do happen.
Ms. Edelson.
It looks like 3 years is the statute of limitations on this for him to have, so in 2005, the fee was paid, so it would have been 3 years and it would have been refunded had they come and applied. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then after the 3 years, it just was no longer valid, or what, it expired at that point?
If, for example, he had assigned his right to Mr. Hansen, the new buyer, to go after a contractor that had performed shoddy work, while Mr. Hansen would have that legal right, if 10 years had expired since the shoddy work was done, there would be no cause of action. There would be no ability to go after the contractor. The same thing holds true in terms of going after or seeking a refund from the district. It's simply too late. Once the statute of limitations is run, then there is no remedy absent a determination by the body who is entitled to raise the defense of the statute of limitations that they have determined that they don't wish to do so.
I see. Okay, I'm comfortable, since it's been 6 years since that expired, that I think it was valid.
Ms. Simone?
So I definitely don't think that the district is in the business of just collecting taxpayers' dollars for the purposes of something that we absolutely care to do, especially in this particular situation. I think that what is important, though, is to keep in mind that this is significantly past the date that was given. I also just it doesn't feel right that the refund is going to someone who didn't pay the expense. That, I think, is to me the piece that most is troubling. And so I think if we were having a different conversation about the person who paid the fees wanting the money back, I actually think that this conversation may, I don't know for a fact, go a very different direction. So I would be supporting of upholding it. I also think we have to be consistent. I think that is also doing the right thing, making sure that we are fair with how we treat those that come before us. And so I think if we need to do something different as far as how we move on forward and how we treat everybody, then that is a conversation we can have, but I think not in this particular situation.
Dr. Paz?
I agree with you, Board President.
All right, we do need a motion on this.
I make the motion to deny the developer fee refund request.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Abstentions? That passes with Parker, Idelson, Paz, and Limon in favor, and Herron opposed. 4-1. Item H1, this is moving on to the conference agenda. The first is a presentation to the Board of Education by AHA, the Academy of Healing Arts. Dr. Yash.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and thank you very much, Mr. Price, for being here this evening. AHA is a significant part of our community and is working in most of our schools. And this presentation comes about as a request by board members for an update on the work that they're doing. So with that, I was going to introduce Mr. Torina, but we've already got the leaders of AHA right here in front of us, so we'll just go right to the meat of the matter.
All right, and I just want to chime in, of course, that we have 20 minutes for this, and that will include a chance for board members to ask questions and make comments.
My name is Dr. Jennifer Freed, and I'm the co-executive director and founder of AHA, which began in 1999. This is Randy Friedman, the other co-executive director and founder. This is Dante Gonzalez, this is Gina Fernandez, and this is the district coordinator of Peace Builders for AHA, Isis Castaneda. I'd also like to introduce Dr. Stacy Poliche, who as a private citizen is serving as an educational liaison for this program. So I get to be the person to tell you great news today, because I've heard a lot of difficult things that you've had to listen to, and we have only great news. So last year, AHA started a new initiative called Peace Builders at Santa Barbara High School. We started with about 55 students who were committed to creating their own positive campus climate of welcoming everyone, creating an inclusive school campus, and learning to interrupt bullying peacefully. They worked all year long as part of a school club, and as you know from Principal John Becchio and Mr. Sandoval, Santa Barbara High School made great strides last year in many respects. We see our work with the students as the ground-up version of the restorative approaches this district has committed to. And I want to say personally, having lived here 30 years, this is the most progressive vision of leadership I've ever seen, and I feel very grateful to all of you. So to tell you what Peace Builders is about, this year we trained a total of about 100 students from San Marcos High School and Santa Barbara High School for 10 intensive hours. What did they learn in those 10 hours? You'll hear a little bit from them. But they learned how to interrupt bullying peacefully, how to resolve conflicts. They learned about the restorative approaches and what the schools were doing with that. They learned about how to really talk in language that was very positive and affirming and respectful to everyone. And they learned how to lead their own connection circles. So what this is that students take charge of their own campus cultures. They go out to other students and create listening circles where they talk about topics that really help all students feel more a part of the school. So we had 2 UCSB researchers come and do a third-party certified evaluation pre and post of what happened in those 10 hours. And you all have those research summaries, so I want to be brief. In almost every area, 99% of the areas we were targeting for improvement, we saw great improvement. Specifically in areas like school belonging, interrupting bullying, having a good sense of self and other people, empathy, and how to connect basically with other people. But what I'm personally so excited about, I can hardly stand it all day today to tell you about it, is we spent all last year developing a state-of-the-art web application for these Peace Builders to use. Okay, let's see. So what this is called is AHA Peace Queue, and it has 5 different areas that students regularly submit answers to. They have peace tips that they're just learning and contributing to. They have the connection circles they're leading with who they're leading them with, and the questions they're asking. They have peace points, the pro-social positive behaviors they're doing on campus. They also have acknowledging other people as outstanding behaviors, and they have one area called I Need Help, which is the areas they want to talk about at the next meetings in terms of what they can improve on. These are some of the peace tips we started off with, and now the students are developing their own peace tips. So just take a moment to see we have diverse people sharing great wisdom in Peace Q tips. Next, we have the connection circle. So in their web application that they can use on their phone or their computer, they put in where they had the connection circle, who participated, and what questions they asked. Next, we have peace points. And I'm telling you, this is where I get so excited. Every morning I wake up to literally dozens of students submitting these peace points. They just have to click on which ones they've done, and they can add their own. And this is another one called Praising Other People. They put in the person's name, and they get to look at what have they done right? What do I want to say that's great about what this student or teacher or somebody at school has done? And lastly, the I Need Help, and this is for further topics at the club meetings. Okay, so here's your test, because you are an extremely educated board. In 4 weeks, how many connection circles do you think 100 students have led? Now, this is all their own initiation. So how many connection circles have they gone out and led on their own? 100 students.
Anybody want to throw out some numbers there?
Come on, be
100
brave.
students, a couple?
200.
Like
200, over 200. They themselves have already, in 4 weeks, reached anywhere from 200 to 300 additional students. Our goal was 1,000 for the year, and on this pace, we're going to way go beyond that. All right, the next thing that blew my mind, and hopefully it will excite you, is the peace points. They don't have to do this every day. We say to them, do it once a week. Well, a lot of them do it a lot more. They add their own. Okay, now who wants to take a guess? How many peace points have been submitted in 4 weeks out of 100 students? 50, good. Going once?
Oh, I'd say that somebody's got, I hope they all have done at least one, so.
1,800.
Wow.
1,800. And this is what I want to tell you that's very inspiring to me as a psychologist and an educator. Dr. Dan Siegel has proven that the teen brain from 12 to 24 learns best when it's scanning for positive behavior and positive outcomes. If you want to see real transformative change in young people, don't tell them what not to do. Give them a way to really concentrate on what's positive and good in themselves and others. We had no idea how this Peace Q would work. I mean, we worked on it very hard. But what we found out is they love doing it. They can't wait to submit their peace points. That means their brains are developing to look for those good things in themselves and others. Finally, I want to tell you on my part that we're so committed to this as a replicable model for the nation, that we're starting here and starting big because this is our hometown and we love it, that we have invested in our resources $80,000 into this program. And that was all raised by our board, and also the web developer donated $40,000 of his time to create this application. So I just want to leave you with, we're on board, we're so happy you're supporting us, and now I'd like to welcome up Dante and Gina and Isis, and they're going to talk to you a bit, and then we'll take questions. Come on up, all of you. Come on up. Come on, come on. Come on. So go ahead. Go, Gina.
Hello. My name is Gina Fernandez, and I am a senior at Santa Barbara High School. I'm also part of the MAD Academy, and I am this year's Peace Builders Club president. Peace Builders has helped me personally. I am now able to say that I have the skills to be able to stand up for someone in need the right way, the proper way, and get whatever needs to be resolved, and not just, I don't know, it's like, I can step in correctly and say the right things to not offend the person with bullying behaviors and to be able to help the person that is being bullied. In my school, I think I've seen many improvements. I've seen a lot of students not say as many derogatory terms, and I'm really I noticed that a lot. I have also noticed that it's united the school because the Peace Builders come from different, I would have not known practically any of them, and now I'm able to say hello to people that are Peace Builders that from around the school, from last year, from this year, and I think Peace Builders would help other Santa Barbara High Schools by uniting their schools as well, and being able to have them know at least one person in each of their classes, because I know at least 3 Peace Builders in all of my classes, and I feel comfortable saying that and being myself in them.
Thank you.
Okay, my turn. Hi, I'm Dante Gonzalez, and I am a junior at Santa Barbara High School. When I first started Peace Builders, I really was interested about learning how to learn about my emotions and how to understand them, but also how to work with other people and how to understand their emotions and how to work with that. By being with Peace Builders, I've learned a lot just about how to connect with other people and how to relate to other people and how to just understand everything and how to be protected while defending other people, defending the bullied. Something that has stuck out to me with my school, I've noticed that a lot of the students feel more unified. I do have a lot of other Peace Builders in my class, so it's fun to just say hi to another Peace Builders and not feel unwelcomed. I feel welcomed in every class because I know that someone's a Peace Builder in there. And yeah.
Thank you, Dante.
Thank you.
Hello. What Gina and Dante didn't mention was that, as you very well know, I'm a Don, and so Don and Royals have the tradition of being on different sides of town, and both of them were part of the first 6 Santa Barbara High School Don Peace Builders to say, I want to go help train the San Marcos, the first wave. So these two, after the morning training, we would all eat lunch, and in the afternoon, they were there as the co-facilitators with us with San Marcos, and we're really appreciative. Dante is also the treasurer of the Santa Barbara High School Peace Builders Club. Because both of them decided this felt right. And so we really want to thank you for the support that you have with not only the students, but for AHA and this Peace Builders initiative. I keep seeing it. This is my second year doing this. I'm coordinating both schools, and I get every single email from every student every single time they're on the Peace Cube web saying, I did this connection circle, I did this praise. So I'm reading lots and replying back to them saying, hey, way to go, that's awesome, another connection circle, a different person. And the ones that I love is not just with the other students, but my mom and I sat down at dinner and we did a connection circle. My siblings and I did a connection circle. I did one with my grandma, in the car. We were driving. So in many ways, it's not just touching our schools and the campus, it's really going back into the family and going into the community, and that to me is a benefit that maybe we didn't see and is beautiful. So thank you, we're very grateful.
So we're thrilled to hear comments or questions at this time.
Board members? Ms. Simon?
Yeah. And Gina has something to
Oh,
give.
you wanted to add, Gina?
I'm going to pass out the Connection Circle guidelines and some Peace Builder practice practices.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm glad we had this presentation. I think that one of the reasons I wanted to have this presentation is because our district has engaged in a lot of work around restorative approaches, and it's really focused on our educators, the adult educators, and what the adult educators can do at our schools to rethink discipline. And so I appreciate this piece of it because I kept hearing from all kinds of people about what AHA was doing, and I realized that this really aligns with what we're doing with adults, because in some way it really makes this initiative not just adult-centered, but also students, the roles that students can play as leaders to change our culture and our climate. It's actually fitting because we have our data research specialist here, who I think in the future is going to be looking at data around school climates or when that survey goes up. And so I just think of the fact that at least at 2 of our high schools, not just have we engaged in changing behaviors, practices for adults, but also for students. I think unfortunately, the topic of bullying is a big issue, and you can't go to, at least I as a school board member, can't go to a school site without hearing from parents that it's on their mind. I know that the city of Santa Barbara is engaging in some anti-bullying initiatives in the month of October, and I think ISIS and AHA are involved in trying to get the message out. So I think it's very important that we have this, and I would like to hear, I guess, from the district standpoint, is if the district is engaging in anything similar or around students, around how not just, I mean, I think of restorative approaches is about the whole school, but is there anything that the district is doing in addition to what AHA is doing, or is AHA really our opportunity to change kind of the practices and behaviors around students?
AHA is our insurgency.
Okay.
This Peace Builders program, what intrigued me about it was it clearly, and I had some very strong advocates, and in relationship to having it happen, and what I saw it really was is the opportunity to do kind of a disruptive innovation. We really haven't asked kids to engage in this kind of thing systematically ever on our high school campuses. We've done, kind of nibbled around the edges on it, but we haven't asked kids to be integral players in their own culture on campus. And, you know, I both Mr. Trina and I had talked a lot about this, about how important the student voice is. So we see this as, you know, and of course we both said, well, what's the data going to say? What does it look like? And the data so far is pretty darn compelling, that it's something that we have to look at, and not just having at our high schools, but throughout probably our district. So, but Santa Barbara High was there was the insurgency, and then their success went to San Marcos, and I'm certain that success will go on to Dos Pueblos. So,
Ms. Idelson?
I have 2 children of mine at Santa Barbara High, so I'm real curious to go home and ask them what they know about this. But I'm just curious your take on how this is transcending the grades, the grade levels. You know, are freshmen seeing this? And then also, you know, down, you know, is there more, you know, 11th graders involved or what? And then also students with different activities going on, do you find that this is starting to hit, you know, like the athletics in a way that, you know, if kids have this language of, you know, peace builders, are they bonding in those areas? And also racially, are they, you know, is it crossing over in a real positive way at this point?
Yes, yes, yes. So
Okay.
First of all, we're really aware of all the competing demands that students have, so we purposefully have put the student club at a lunchtime so it wouldn't compete with athletics. The training took place in the summer, so it wouldn't compete with other things students had to do. We purposefully selected the cohort to be a racially diverse mix that would represent the demographics on the campus. So we've made that, and also with males and females. We've been very conscious to imagine this as a hub that is representative of the greater good, and that they go out and multiply. I think I missed your first question. What was it?
The grade levels.
Oh, yes. So AHA has a program at Santa Barbara High and San Marcos. We've yet to get into DP that serves the 9th graders. And so this came out of the fact that we couldn't get into the 10th, 11th, and 12th grade curriculum. So the Peace Builders is 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. To answer your question, the amount of students we have are from the 12th grade because they're kind of exiting and going on. But Gina and Dante have been in it for 2 years, and they're now training other students. And also Mr. Sandoval has these students sit in on the restorative circles as student members because they're the most trained. So we are trying to encompass the whole campus with all grades, with representatives from every grade.
Great, thank you.
Dr. Paz?
You know, it would be great to see this. I love data, and there's lots of data presented. but I also like to see visuals and stories, so it would be great to see more of the visuals in the story part. Kind of like, how does this look like in the community? How does this look like for students on an everyday day basis? That would be great for you to give that to the board. You know, I was intrigued about the comment about the community being impacted because as you know, when you're out and about in the community, how would that look like in the community? How would students take that to someone they see on the street or someone they know who's maybe a distant family member or something? So that would be great if you could do something like that, because I would really be interested in that.
Well, that is part of the 3-day training, is how to take it into their families and communities, and it's actually very simple in this way. If you're close enough to anybody to have a conversation, you can ask them if they'd be willing to participate in a connection circle. And it has, you know, those guidelines. But what we found is we've trained the students how to do it, that when they go up to the family members or each other at school, a simple yes or no. But if it's a yes, people are really interested to try a new way of connecting and listening to each other.
Yeah.
But the visual stuff will come to you. But I guess I want to know, because when you said it, I saw photos and videos, and you like all of that.
Anything like that.
Well, I was going to recommend to any board member, I know I've personally observed it when I've been on campus, and I don't want to artificially create a situation with where a peace builder is with other students, but my guess is that I'd be happy to invite you. You could walk around campus with me or Dr. Drotti, and Mr. Sandoval really has taken the lead on the Santa Barbara High School campus, along with Ms. Wooster, along with Ms. Castaneda as well. And you could see it, get a real good, because I have a very clear picture. I'm a visual person of what it looks like.
I'm not necessarily looking for like a whole video, so that's not what I'm thinking about.
We do have
But
a
if
little
you-
one from last summer.
Yeah.
But what I want to say with two of those, because you're visual, so let me create the picture. 10th grade Mad Academy retreat last weekend. Of those 10th graders, as I'm always looking from the different pods, we have 6 10th graders that went through the Peace Builders training. So during the retreat, what I did was I went there and had those 6 lead 73 10th graders in connection circles for a few hours. So not only were they getting trained, but then they went back into their own particular academy, small groups, asking questions. How can they listen to each other? How can they work better with each other? And they were willing, they were scared, but the other 10th graders supported them. So they're taking it now back into their own hub, and they're like, okay, I did that. They have their talking piece, they have their guideline, and that was an experience that all 10th graders at Mad Academy had because those 6. The other thing, and yes, 2 more things, is you are welcome to come to our club meeting at Santa Barbara High School or our club meeting at San Marcos. I can leave the dates. It's either Monday or Thursday during lunch. Where do you want to go? Are you closer to Santa Barbara High or San Marcos? And what we're doing is we're continuing the conversation on how to do this, reinforcing the connection circle, how to ask questions, how to talk to someone that when you're bothered. And so that was the theme for yesterday at Santa Barbara High School. That's going to be the theme again at San Marcos. And you can be a part of the connection circle, and you can see how these peace builders are working with each other to get support to then go out and do this. In January, what we're going to do, because we're bringing the Dons and the Royals together, is that we're going to actually bring all the peace builders together and do a mid-year training so that they don't feel like they're just a part of their own school, but that now they're part of a greater movement within the teen community in Santa Barbara. So in January, you will be definitely invited to come and partake with San Marcos and Santa Barbara High School.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was just thinking about, when I'm looking or thinking in my head and thinking about a picture visualization of something, a story that goes with that picture, what it represents to that particular, like, here was the conclusion of this particular thing. Something along those lines would be great, not just for our purposes, because I'm not necessarily just looking at it for my purpose, but just the wider community, so they have an awareness of what's happening in our community. I mean, unless you're touched, you don't necessarily know that it's there, so how can we spread it out?
Thank you, because I think we can do a story arc really well,
Yeah.
and you've just given us a really good idea.
Yeah.
Right, and with that, obviously, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. But what I want to share out, what you haven't had on the screen is, of course, you've got a great website, which would probably be the best place to put the stories. And you already have a lot of great stories there, and that's ahasb.org. So for members of the community who watch this video on Saturday or watch it on our website where it will be forever, and you can see yourselves almost immediately, it gets up so fast, then you... You did great. Then people that look at that will know that the website is a great place to go for information because they probably won't have the opportunities to go visit your club meetings, things like that. But also, I want to point out what we haven't had up on the screen and what we were provided was great pre-participation research data, post-participation research data. That's available to the board, it's available to members of the public, and so if you just go to our board meeting for today, September 23rd, 2014, and you look at the supporting materials, that's there for people to look at so they can see the very serious research that you've done around this too.
And we will be doing research throughout the year and collecting data, so hopefully at the end of the school year we can give that to the community and to you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this point, we have a quick item, H2. She said famous last words, right? First reading of Board Policy 4030, non-discrimination in employment, and AR 4117.7, employment status reports.
These come from Human Resources, so Dr. Christensen is here to present them and answer any questions or take direction from the board regarding modification.
All right, good evening again. So the first board policy before you is the non-discrimination in employment. We've already updated most of our documents to reflect all of these protected categories, with one exception where religious creed has now been changed from religion to just religious creed. So that's the primary change in terminology. Also prohibited discrimination in this particular regulation also includes or describes as sex to include breastfeeding and related medical conditions. Additionally, religious creed to include religious dress and grooming practices. And as an, oh, by the way, we are scheduling for this November, a 2-hour training with all of our administrators on the interpretation of religious creed.
Thank you.
So we request, this is your first reading. Any questions?
So board members, you've taken a look at this AR and this BP, actually, quite significant changes in the wording. Were there any changes that anybody felt needed to come forward, or any concerns? I didn't see anything either. It looked great and very appropriate. So I think that maybe this could come forward at our next meeting on consent. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Christensen.
You're welcome. And the second is AR 4117.7, which is employment status reports. And when the district takes any kind of action or pending action on a certificated employee in relationship to misconduct, we have to report that individual to the CTC, but it requires an actual employment action. And those employment actions would include a dismissal or non-reelection, a resignation, a suspension or placement on unpaid administrative leave for more than 10 days, a retirement, or is otherwise terminated. So any of those employment status changes related to misconduct or an allegation of pending misconduct would require us to notify the CTC on its form and then provide a lot of additional information as is described in the AR.
Thank you. Any changes on this one? Another one to come forward on consent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we are at item H3, the Summary of Local Control Accountability Plan, otherwise known as the LCAP Metrics Blueprint. Dr. Cash.
Thank you very much, Madam President. As board members are aware, I've discussed on several board meetings our plan to bring forward our draft of the way in which we would measure the goals in which the board approved that are written in the LCAP, how we would measure our progress, the instruments that we would look at, the data that we would hope to be able to obtain. We're very fortunate to have Dr. Guillermo Juan working in our staff, and she, along with Dr. Dryde and Mr. Handel, have put together this first draft, and we're looking for your input. And I know that Dr. Wan is going to be available to go through.
Yes.
Dr. Drotti.
Yes.
Right now.
The board members, thank you, Dr. Cash. You have one document in front of you, which is this large LCAP document. You've seen this over and over. As you may remember, this is a very cumbersome document to siphon through. We recognize that. So in our conversations with principals, we needed to create a document that actually simplifies the information that's in this document, so that way, as they are attempting to make the LCAP a reality, that they are very targeted and purposeful in identifying what needs to be done. So with that said, we met with as Dr. Grammer Wan comes up, we'll what you see on in front of you in the presentation is the document we created. The whole goal of that is for principals to look at what is specifically they need to look at this year and possibly future years. So in there you'll see, and Dr. Wan will go through the organization, but the whole idea is to be able to look at the document in a simplified manner, identify what needs to happen and how we're going to measure it. It's befitting that we need to have this conversation with you now, because after this, we need to start talking to the principals about incorporating this information into their single plans. With that said, Dr. Wan, why don't you lead us through the document?
Okay, good evening. My hope is that the text under purpose of this document and how to read this document may have helped guide you. I will briefly go over that again. But before I proceed into the actual metrics, I want to let you know that I want to pause and stop and see if there are any questions regarding that. So the main purpose of this document is to create coherence around the metrics in the LCAP, as Dr. Drotti described. It's really focused on soliciting feedback on the logistics involved in extracting that data to then report on the metrics that we have here. And then also, it's really a blueprint that it's not what it's going to look like when it's reported. It's just making sure that we are all on the same page as to what the actual metric will be in relation to how it was stated in the LCAP. Okay, so how to read the document. You'll see that each priority area is color-coded. So for example, we have priority area 1 here, basic, and then under that, the goals are listed as they are written in the LCAP. I've cross-referenced or mapped this to the page in the LCAP, the draft of June 24th, 2014, and then also the strategic plan 12-15. It needs to be updated based on what was most recently approved. And that will happen in the near future. Okay, so each priority area has a table, and I'm going to go across starting with the metric number. And so I've created metric numbers that correspond to the priority area and the way that it is listed in the LCAP. So for example, we have metric 1.1a. The 1 corresponds to priority area 1. 1a is what it is listed as in the LCAP. And so there are a few ones as we go on, you'll see that there are further delineations in there, and I'll explain that as we get to them. Next is the actual metric, so kind of a more statistical language of what will be pulled. We have here credentialed teacher teaching outside of subject area rate. Then we have the LCAP description, how it's written verbatim in the LCAP. So here it was written as compliance with Commission on Teacher Credential Audit. The data source, where this data is housed, where it will come from, the unit of analysis, the format in which the metric will be reported, and then the last 2 columns that are filled in color are the desired district level subgroups and site level subgroups. We are not
held accountable to all of these in the LCAP, but we have had a conversation internally with site principals and district leadership that if we are able to eventually report out on more subgroups than are currently in the LCAP, that will help identify the groups that need specific, that need a little bit of attention in different areas. It will help us close the achievement gap between groups in a more directed way. So before I start to go through some of these, are there any questions regarding the format of the document?
Can I ask board members a question, Madam President?
Yes, you may.
Dr. Guillermo Juan is very capable of going through each individual cell in the document. Or she can highlight, or we can go simply, I know you all very well. You've all read it, and I'm sure you all have some specific areas you'd like to ask questions about. So whichever direction you'd like to go, Dr. Guillermo Juan is capable.
Dr. Paz?
Sorry. I'd just like to ask general questions, because I don't feel like we need to go through all of the different cells, because that's just overkill. I could spend the rest of the evening doing that. But I do have some general questions, and then I would have some more general questions at the end for the for other ways of disaggregating the data that would be interesting to think about or at least discuss.
Other board members? I mean, I'm thinking if you want to just go ahead, if there's still more to give in sort of the overview picture before we, because we'll have questions probably in every section, and we can take the lead on that. But I don't know if you want to give us a little bit more overview before we jump in and start hammering you with
questions.
Yeah.
I think, so I think what would be good is if we took this priority area by priority area.
Okay.
And so I can just give a brief overview of
the
what
priority.
each one is,
Great.
and then I think it would be beneficial for time to field your questions.
Great. And one, Ms. Limon.
Sorry, just more of a process question. Going back to this, when you put together this document, did you extract everything from the LCAP per se, or did you and a body of individuals talk about the appropriate metrics? Just so I have an understanding of, was this a group of individuals that created the metrics? Was this exactly lifted from the LCAP?
Okay, great question. Thank you. Yes and yes. So this has gone through multiple iterations. The first iteration was me taking verbatim out of the LCAP what is currently in the LCAP description column. Everything else was discussed with the leadership team and cabinet in multiple iterations, and this is the current draft that we've wanted to bring to the board.
Okay, so cabinet has had input on the metrics. and
Yes,
data.
cabinet, principals, APs.
Okay, all right,
Yes.
thank you.
And Ms. Idelson.
I just have a question with the document. When this is finalized, will it be wonderful in that you'll see something, and when it says see appendix, you'll just touch it and it'll jump to that appendix?
Great question. Okay, we are I am in the midst of identifying long-term technological solution to get this data out and available. You'll see in data source that it's drawing from disparate sources. So right now we have a bunch of data silos, and I need to solve the technological problem of how to get that all into one place.
To link.
To link it. And so the idea would be that when a metric is reported, that the metric would be reported in such a way that you can see that metric for all of these subgroups.
Okay.
Whether it's going to be web and click is to be determined.
Okay, that would be wonderful.
Yes.
By what
Yes,
I'm
I
seeing
agree.
here, that would be fantastic.
And I just have one quick question that will illuminate everything. When I see the word all under district level subgroups, my first thought is you're lumping everybody together into one group. But I think what you're saying is by all the subgroups that are listed in the appendix, it will be broken out that way. Is that correct?
It's both of them. So we will list all students
as one group,
as
but
one
then you will
group,
also
and then
break
we'll
out.
also break it out. Yes.
Okay, super. Okay, that was just my general question. Now,
Fantastic.
overviews on the priority areas.
Okay, so priority area 1 basic is really about the credentialing of teachers, the provision of Common Core aligned materials, compliance with the Williams Act, with regard to facilities, et cetera. So that is what is featured in this area. And I think I'll leave it at that and then take your questions. Yes.
I don't
Dr. Paz?
I don't have questions about this specific area, but I do have questions more broadly, so I'm going to raise them right now. Two things that I see that would be really beneficial, at least for my purposes, or from maybe I'm the only person that's thinking about this. You list the source, but not who will report. So you're listing all kinds of different sources for the data, but not who's responsible ultimately. Is it at the district level? Is it the site level? Because you're breaking it down at the site level, but you're looking at it in the district level, so that would be really helpful. And the second thing, a calendar for collection and reporting. We have a Seabeds Day. It's going to occur concurrently with the Seabeds Day across the, what would that look like? And I think the last board meeting I also spoke about, well, you can collect them. When are you going to report them to the general public? What would that look like? When would those periods occur? Is it a single day? Is it across several? Is one area going to be reported one particular month, another one? So that would be really helpful, because then that puts everyone on the same plane in terms of expectations when that would occur. So
yes.
Our goal would be to report back periodically on the LCAP once the metrics are identified throughout the year, with the understanding it probably wouldn't be till close to the end of the year that all of the data that would be available could be reported. But throughout the year, various parts of the data would be reported. And it's a good idea to have a calendar so you can have kind of a game plan.
And the reason I'm asking is twofold. One is for that reason. The other is that in our LCAP, we put that we were going to look at our LCAP mid-year.
Yes.
So if we're going to look at it mid-year to make mid-year corrections, it would be helpful to have the majority of this data up to that point in time, even if it was looking at that particular calendar or that particular fiscal year and then the previous fiscal year if we didn't have up-to-date data at that point in time.
Yes.
So
yes.
that would be really helpful.
Yes, and I want to affirm the 3 points that you've made. I've begun to have initial conversations around those. This is kind of step one, and I feel like logistically in making this happen, that what you've brought up is the next step of where I would want to go with it. But don't want to go too far down that route without bringing this to you first. But thank you, duly noted.
Okay.
Okay.
I think
So
you can
shall
move
I
on,
to
yeah.
the next one? Okay. Priority area 2 is the implementation of state standards. And so the first goal is that all instruction and curriculum is aligned to the Common Core and Next Generation Science. And goal 2 is that all pupils will take common formative assessments in ELA, math, and science. I want to note here that a number of these metrics are what Dr. Drawdy is calling a process goal. So they are not necessarily listed in the LCAP under identified metrics, but they may be listed in actions for year 1, year 2, et cetera. And so those are indicated with an asterisk. And we can if there's any. We can talk about any of those that you may have questions about, but those with the asterisks may not necessarily be something that would be reported back to the state. It would be more an internal guide for us to make sure that we are making progress so that we can get to a point, for example, with common formative assessments where we would have student data on that.
May I ask, sir, when you say not reported to the state, but it would be reported to the community?
Yes, yes. Everything that is in here, if we agree that this is what we want to do, would be available to the community.
Okay.
Yeah.
And may I ask how much, is it realistic that all of these formative assessments will be in place this year?
Yes. With the first, if we are going to do 2 reports out, obviously, we may have the first, we may report out on the first one. The other ones will be more in the spring.
Okay. Ms. Limon?
So I have a question about the first one, because I think of that as, so it's going to be implemented this year, so we have faith that we're going to have textbooks that the state's going to, I mean, so that's what I'm trying to figure out.
No,
How
that's a
does
good
that-
question. The state has not adopted textbooks, except for in English Language Arts in K-6, in their muy malo. And so until the board adopts additional textbooks, the Williams requirement really is only that we have a textbook and that we are providing Common Core aligned materials, which you've already approved, that the elementary school teachers have brought forward.
Okay.
It's going to be fascinating because the whole Williams issue, that I was at a meeting Friday and this came up with 50 superintendents. You know, somebody asked the questions, how are you dealing with the Williams Act in relationship to textbooks with Common Core? And we had a representative, actually Wes Smith, the executive director from Access, sitting next to me, and he said, state doesn't know how we're going to do that.
Well, and I guess that's one of the things that I'm looking at some of this, because I think these are great internal goals, but we have to align our goals with, or not just goals, but process with that of the state. And so when the state doesn't have it, I'm trying to figure out how to, I mean.
We'll continue, the best advice is we're going to continue doing what we've done under the previous Williams Act requirements. So, you know, and as those Common Core aligned materials become available and become adopted by school boards in California, then, you know, it'll be more like it was, though it may not ever be how it is now, where you walk into a classroom and you say, hold up your English Language Arts textbook. Instead, kids may hold up a tablet and say, here, it's on here.
And Dr. Andrade, I don't know if you've...
Well, I also want to point out, because of earlier comments from public comment, we are still using the older textbooks. We have not used them. How we're using them is different. When we use them, all that has been realigned with the Common Core. We've also purchased other supplemental material to support the textbooks that we have that's adopted. So I don't want anyone to feel that we have gotten rid of the textbooks we've always had. We're still using them, but how we're using them is different.
Thank you, that's a good point.
And can I make one more point?
Yes, you may.
And I think one of the important pieces, I'm sorry, I'm trying not to deviate from this presentation, but I think it needs to be made clear that our professional learning plan that we developed this year is tied in just to a T with what's going on, our goals here. We've pulled out our teachers on a number of days to create all these common formative assessments to go through that process. So there's a number of assessments that have to be created that we anticipate are going to be done during the course of this year. So I'm quite sure you're going to hear a lot about, you know, we're out X amount of days. So it's important that you guys have the response of, you know, one of our goals is to ensure that we have all of these common formative assessments created, and everyone has a standardized understanding of what student learning needs to be across all the grade levels, across every single site. It needs to be the same. So all of these descriptions of all the metrics, excuse me, are aligned in our professional learning plan. So there's a lot of work to be done, and all of this is all aligned to what we've been doing. Ben and I, Dr. Andrade and I have been creating this past year.
Great. Mr. Herron.
You hit a hot point. I was at Day of Caring talking with the teacher, and his comment was, if my students were out of the class as much as I am, they'd be truant. How do you respond to that?
Well, I want to respond to that by saying that we expect and believe that our teachers are professionals. And just like a physician, an engineer, a lawyer, there's continuous learning that's required. And we don't contractually have any other option in relationship to professional learning other than the 185 days that we have teachers. So as a district, we provided multiple opportunities for professional learning this summer. Many teachers took advantage of that. some didn't, and that requires us to continue to engage in that process throughout the school year.
And Dr. Drotta, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just want to add something to that. You hit a passionate topic, I guess. So, but I think Dr. Casson and Mr. Emilio, as you look at this, I hope that you see the vision behind why we put those steps in place. The idea that, for example, someone saying, "I don't want to be pulled out of a class," and then the question then has to be asked: if not, how are you going to guarantee that you're teaching the curriculum? What else do we have in place to say that you're actually teaching it? If we don't have common assessments in place, how do we ensure that we are focused on the target or the desired student outcomes that we're looking for? So those are, and we have staff out there that might not understand the macroscopic picture of this. So our job as a leadership team, is to have these conversations with teachers and why we're doing what we're doing. It's not just for the sake of getting out, just to get out, but there's outcomes that we need. That's is student-centered.
Thank you. Anything more on this area? Dr. Guillermo Juan. Mr. Herron.
Just one general question. How much of this information is going to be provided by the district to the sites versus how much do they have to create themselves?
My understanding is that correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Drotti, but that the district, that we are providing all of it to the sites. Would you either of you like to elaborate on that?
Would you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
How much of all this is going to be on the back of each site administrator versus how much can the district pull and feed out to them?
For their site plans?
For anything they have to do.
So we serve as facilitators of conversation, and the product is developed collectively. That's the reason why the TOSAs are so critical to this. As we go through a journey, for example, as we're developing a common unit exam or task, say in Unit 1 for math, that's a conversation that allows for us to go through a journey of understanding the outcome that's necessary and to collectively come up with a task together. If, say, Dr. Drotti created the task, I would have went through the journey myself, but I'm not in front of students understanding why I created that task. We need the teachers to work together in establishing that.
But I think you're asking a much different question, maybe, like who's going to get the data? Are we going to give it to the district?
Yeah, how much burden is there on the staff administrators to dig up all this stuff?
It's me.
Well, we'll be giving it to them, but I have to tell you that there is significant benefit in the digging.
Okay.
From a process-oriented approach, we expect that our administrators are going to want to dig into the data to understand in a more complete way how their students are performing. But the bottom line is we will be giving them the data.
You'll be creating that they can dig into it.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. You will actually see much of this represented on their site plans.
Great.
Because that's how you would know that they actually have a plan specific to your site.
Thank you. Dr. Guillermo Juan?
Are we ready to move to priority 3?
I think so.
Actually, I'm sorry, there are subgroups. This is very important. There are subgroups for priority 2 that have to do with English learners primarily, as well as foster youth and low socioeconomic status students. I just want to briefly mention that with the exception of metric 2S1 CELT 1 year of growth rate, the other metrics should be accounted for in the subgroups for everything else that's already reported. So unless there are questions around that, we can proceed. Okay. Priority 3 is parent involvement. And the first goal here is that all parents participate in decision-making regarding school and district priorities. Goal 2 is to increase parent and community use of the Parent Resource Center at the district office location. And goal 3 is that parent participation in decision-making regarding school and district priorities will reflect the demographics of the district and the school. And I do want to note that in the LCAP, the metrics for goals 1 and 3 are the same, and that we have started a discussion of doing a separate evaluation of parent programs that could occur outside of the LCAP reporting as currently listed in the LCAP document.
Mr. Herron?
In the lower right, what is parent ed and mother ed?
Great question. Okay, parent education level and
Okay.
mother's education level. A lot of the research indicates that the mother's education level is one of the most predictive of various success indicators.
Thank you.
Ms. Simone?
So it's interesting because every time you look at pieces of the LCAP in different formats, you catch different things that you didn't catch it when you saw it in a previous format. So I'm looking at 3.1A, 3.2A LCAP description, and I realized that is this all the parent groups that we're looking at? Is it just limited to these, or does it include other groups as well?
These groups are what is listed in the LCAP. So if we want to have a conversation around including other groups, I think that needs to be, I think you're bringing it up at the appropriate juncture. We can include other parent groups that are not listed in here in the reporting. That's a logistical thing that we can work out if that's.
Well, and I was specifically thinking to the district kind of subcommittees we have on the high school graduation requirement, on the wellness council, and I guess in light of our last meeting where it sounded like some parents would like to be involved, I was just thinking of those district ones, and I didn't catch it actually in the LCAP before, and I didn't know if this description included those, or if, because they weren't comprised of all parents, those are actually mixed groups of stakeholders, parents, district folks, and board members. It didn't make sense to put them in there. But
That's the question mark, because it says parent organizations. Dr. Drotti?
Yes. When we put the goal for this specific or the LCAP description for this specific piece here, it had to do with the information we received at the meetings, whether we went to San Marcos, Santa Barbara High, or at the board meetings. A lot of parents came and expressed certain conditions that they wanted to see. We felt that in order, we couldn't make a decision right there and then without representing other parents. So the plan was to get a committee of representatives from different parent groups identified here to have a conversation about the conditions they want to see. So instead of just quickly making a decision based on feedback, that was often not very coherent. We wanted to have a deeper conversation, so we almost basically bought time to be able to do this in a more.
Well, and also what I heard in my parent meetings, and I did probably 30 of them, these are the groups that they wanted to see changed to reflect the demographics of their school community. No one said the Wellness Council or the Sustainability Committee, or no one mentioned those. So I think probably, to be frank, that's why they didn't ever come up.
right, and I guess that one of my concerns is they're not often mentioned because they're not well attended by parents. And so I don't know that that necessarily means that we don't consider those as much as it is like, well.
No, if you think we should collect data around that, then now's the time to put them in.
I would be in favor of looking at our district committees, not every committee out there, but the district committees, and looking at parent participation, and if we have those, especially since they're centered around topic areas that are priorities for our district.
Which ones would you suggest?
So we actually have the list of, I think there's 6 district ones.
Okay, so all of those?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm. And so there's a special ed high school graduation requirement, there's the wellness, I see PAC's already on there, so that's one of them. Am I missing?
The GATE District Advisory Committee is not on there.
There you go.
Okay.
So I
All
think
right.
that's a
great one. Yeah.
I also just want to add to that, I've been working with Dr. Ramirez to identify site-level parent programs, whether they're organizations or not is to be determined, but that is another layer of data that we are beginning to create a scaffold for collecting and tracking in relation to the students in our district. So I wanted to give that information to you as well. Okay. Next one.
Yep.
Okay. Priority 4 is pupil achievement. The first goal is that all pupils achieve at or above grade level in ELA and math. The second is that all district graduates are college and career ready. This one is quite long, and We have a variety of state and common formative assessments listed here.
And
Many
I
of
just
them
want to
are high school.
I want to point out that we have a new acronym that's been floating out there, but we haven't actually seen it at board level before, and that's CASP. So if you want to talk about what that was and what it is now.
Yes. I want to make sure I say the acronym correctly.
Because I think of that essentially as what we used to call STAR.
Correct. It is. So it's the California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress, and this will be essentially it will be the Smarter Balance state assessments as they are rolled out.
Thank you.
It's just the host overarching name.
Great.
In a nutshell. Okay. So you'll notice many of these are focused on secondary, particularly with the college and career ready. There are a few that have to do with both elementary and secondary. A lot of that is let's see, 4.2F, the overall GPA. You'll also notice that there are a number of subgroups here. Again, many of these will be covered in the disaggregated data for other metrics in the LCAP. Would you like any clarification on the metrics here?
Anything on this? My only question is, are there any updates when parents would actually see data about their students from Smarter Balanced? Is there any? I don't know if it's after the end of this school year or if it's going to be the next.
Yes, this still, we do have to the end of September, but all our indications are that the assessment students take this spring will be reported individually, reported to the school and to the district.
But it will not count toward a new, whatever type of API score is
The
that correct?
API is left undetermined as to exactly what it's going to be.
All right, so when students take the assessment this coming spring, parents and all the other groups, but parents are particularly what I'm interested in, then they will see their students' results.
Correct.
Okay.
Both in math and English language arts, and they will continue to get 5th, 8th, and 10th grade CST science scores.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions on this section? Looks like we're shifting to blue.
Okay, priority 5, pupil engagement. We have 4 goals here that are highly interrelated. Increase in school attendance rates. Goal 2, decrease in chronic absenteeism. Goal 3, decrease in dropout rates. Goal 4, increase graduation rates. And I want to just mention that the way that we are planning to calculate these various rates follows the CDE. We've had an internal discussion around that, and that is what we have arrived at to report back to you on.
Great.
Okay. Priority 6, school climate. We have 5 goals here. Decrease suspension rates. Goal 2, decrease expulsion rates. Goal 3, increase the level of school connectedness of pupils, staff, and parents. Goal 4, schools are centers of health and wellness. And Goal 5, increase the level of sense of safety, again, of pupils, staff, and parents. The one area that I want to draw attention to is Goal 4, schools are a center of health and wellness. And originally, actually currently in the LCAP, there was no metric to measure this. And so we had a conversation in cabinet and also with the APs and principals at charge as to potential metrics. And so that is what is listed here under 6.4, so on and so forth. So I would welcome your input as to what metrics you as a board might be most interested in seeing, and we can take that back to folks to firm that up.
When I look at that, and I look at 6.4H in particular, the number of partnerships with community agencies supporting health and wellness, I just want to be sure that we do things that include partnerships, for example, with the city of Santa Barbara in terms of after-school sports and just using it, Parks and Rec having use of school sites as a place for sports and other physical activities outside of school hours, things like that. Okay. Any questions or comments on this section? Okay.
Okay. Priority Area 7 is course access. We have 3 goals. The first is that all pupils are at grade level in ELA and math. Second is that all pupils meet the A through G requirements for UC and CSU admission. And then goal 3 is that at every school, pupil enrollment and achievement in GATE honors, AP, IB, and dual enrollment reflects the demographics of the school. And again, those will be fleshed out with the subgroups for many of the other metrics. So again, you'll see CASP, ELA, and math. Those are the smarter balanced assessments. And you'll see again the creation and administration of common formative assessments. So many of these metrics are measuring multiple goals in our LCAP. Something that is unique to this particular area is 7.2A, the pupil-generated 10-year plan. Most everything else is fairly straightforward. I do want to mention at the very bottom, 7.2E. In the LCAP, 7.2EA is what is listed, the CSU UC acceptance rate. And with district leadership, B, C, and D were also identified as desired data for us to pursue in the future. So again, it's not in the LCAP, but it is what folks are wanting to see. And so we will work to get that as it becomes available or as we're able to find the means to do so. So that would be the application rate of the students who are eligible, the college enrollment rate, and then college GPA.
Question.
Or college completion.
Ms. Edison? CalPAS, is that a?
CalPAS is it's essentially a, it's like a data warehouse where you're going to get information on students' enrollment, so from secondary into post-secondary.
Okay, and is it, how broken down is it, can you earmark kids coming out of a certain school district, or?
Yes, I'm on the CalPAS Plus committee, and it is it's a classic. It's only as good as the data that gets provided, and not every UC participates. For example, UC Berkeley does not participate. I do want to note that the University of Southern California, however, does. And that UC Santa Barbara does participate, Santa Barbara City College does. And it's a potentially incredible resource for us that I'm working with Russ Rumberger. You probably all know Dr. Rumberger at UCSB on trying to sharpen. We've met for the last 2 years actually about what it looks like for our region. We're kind of taking the lead in how we can inform, in particular, high schools in our region, what is working and what's not beyond just the acceptance rate, which is relatively easily obtainable. We're looking at 2-year success in this community college, or what does success look like? Is it the completion of an AA degree? Is it within 2 years, within 3 years, within 4 years?
So are you able to follow a student who leaves the district and then find out how far do they go? And one of the, because of CalPADS, we now have unique student identifiers throughout the state of California that allow us to do that. But again, if they attend an institution that's not a participatory institution, then that student's data is unreportable. We'll have to get behind Berkeley.
I do have a question on this section, and that is, Goal 1 is essentially redundant from the Priority 4 section. And when you look at the actual LCAP, I think that there's an important distinction. It's not just that all pupils are at grade level in ELA and math, it's that they're at grade level in ELA and math within 3 years of starting school within the district. And I think that that's essentially, I had interpreted that in the LCAP as when kids are coming in at different levels and with different backgrounds and different, parent education levels and different languages, that we would have 3 years to try to bring them up. And so I think that if we're going to keep it in here, otherwise it just seems completely redundant to me, and I don't know that we'd need to, except for that it's in the LCAP, that we need to put that piece in to make that understanding that this is about course access for kids that don't often have course access to every single type of course that we have in the district, and so I think that it's important to include that wording in there.
Yes, so I can make that change here. I think when the board goes to revisit the LCAP in the future, then
we might want to.
Yes, but I verbatim needed to take what is there, and I think that process has helped us see what is written in. What is not written in, what may need clarification.
Yeah.
So thank you for bringing that up.
Any other questions on that section? Okay.
Okay, priority 8, other pupil outcomes. These primarily have to do with science and arts and physical fitness. And so you will see similar metrics as have been already stated, but for those particular subject areas here. So we see common formative assessments, we see state assessments. One of the process goals has to do with completing the visual and performing arts strategic plan and developing action plans.
Any questions or comments on this section? Dr. Paz.
Should we go to the last section?
This one?
Yes.
Yes.
So I have a couple thoughts. One, since it's not part of the LCAP, but it is part of a strategic plan, is the promotion of preschool experiences, pre-K. And so that would be a subgroup that I would love to see, whether a child had a preschool experience before coming to our school system.
Okay.
And we have a lot of the data, and at this point in time, Michelle Robertson had presented some data that showed quite a bit of our students who actually have a preschool experience, but for those who wouldn't, that would be a good comparison group to look at.
Great.
And sort of what type of preschool experiences they have, formal or informal preschool experiences, that would be really interesting to me. And the other part, we had in the LCAP, but I don't see it here, is absenteeism. So that would be another one when you're looking at disaggregating the data a little more.
By students who are
chronically
absent as a group, as a subgroup. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Sure, I know that it's a metric in one of the other priority areas.
The reason I bring it up is that when you look at that as an indicator for student failure, not graduating high school, that's actually the #1 indicator of whether they are or they're not.
Right.
So that would be really great. And then the other question I had, these are two comments. When you look at that particular area as something to look at, it becomes a method or a way to look at a pupil early warning system of starting to target those particular students who are beginning to look and have that pattern of missing so many days of school, that they will not graduate, they will not do well, and there's obviously something else that's happening with them. So that would be something for me to be interested in, and I'm sure everyone else in the school district, especially those who are in the secondary, to begin to look at that. And then general comments, some of the data, especially when you start disaggregating by different levels, get to the point in time where they become more topical reports that would not to put something else on top of your plate, but those would eventually come up as questions, I'm sure, from a lot of people in the school district. So that may be something that we would want to discuss in a future point and date.
Yes, I think that's a good idea. I also want to note with the multiple intersections of different subgroups, that it's feasible that the number of students in those groups may be too small to put forth publicly. So, we want to make sure that the students are not identifiable to the public. Sure. So I just wanted to I wanted to state that publicly in case we come back at some point with data that is not reported in that format.
Put a little star there.
Yes, we'll put an asterisk. We'll denote that accordingly.
All right, Ms. Dimon?
So thank you, Dr. Guillermo Juan, for this presentation. I actually think it has been helpful to go through this because I do realize several things have come up for us that we just didn't catch in the LCAP. So I think this process has been very helpful. It's exciting, but you have quite a job in front of you. But I do think it's exciting because I think we get to think a lot bigger about our alignment with our goals and outcomes and what that means for these groups, which I think are the most important element of our school district, our students. So what does this mean for our students? So thank you for all of those involved in this. I think this is a useful document. And so speaking of things that I think we may have missed on the LCAP, we're about to have a presentation from our academies. They are nowhere mentioned in this. So
other than
do we do as a board, do we want, I was looking at this and I didn't know if it was item 7 or 8 that it should be mentioned. We have after school programs, we have AVID. I don't think that as a whole our academies are small enough to become identifiable, but if you lump them all together, but I don't know where we look at them as our academy as part of our measures of.
I would put it in course access, actually. Yeah. It needs to be in section 7.
I would agree with that.
Priority 7.
So I would personally, like to see, I didn't know if 7 or 8, but 7 is great. I'd like to see something mentioned in relation to
Programs
a metric
of choice,
about
under
our
goal
academy.
3, essentially. And, I know that you've lifted this directly from the LCAP, so that's where we missed that. But I think that as, it's okay, I think, to add in that as another group that we look at when we're looking at the metrics. So,
absolutely.
And we can more clearly define it in the LCAP next year. Thank you for catching that, Ms. Limon.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. And thank you so much. And obviously, this is something that we'll be looking at every year as the LCAP changes every year to whatever extent it changes. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have to tell you that there's no other district doing what Dr. Guillermo Juan is doing right now that I'm aware of. We have this construct of having a metric blueprint that's discussed publicly. Like I said, I was with 50 superintendents last week, and just people aren't doing this. So really want to commend Dr. Guillermo Juan and Dr. Drotti and Mr. Handel and Mr. Serena for making this happen. So
thank you very much. Dr. Paz?
I also want to thank you because as someone who loves data, this is totally great. I love it. So thank you very much for all your work.
Thank you. All right. At this time, we are moving on to item H4. This is a discussion of secondary programs of choice and their annual evaluation reports.
Well, thank you very much, Madam President. As this is a secondary item, I'll have Dr. Drotti introduce it.
Great. We've invited the administration of each high school and also the directors of the programs of choice. Why don't we start with Santa Barbara High, since Mr. Becchio has to get on the road to go to Anaheim tonight, so we'll start with Santa Barbara High.
That's not because your son goes there?
Well, I don't want to mention that part, but.
Good evening, board members, superintendents. I'm here tonight representing Santa Barbara High, of course, but tonight we have for you a presentation by the Matt Academy and the VADA Academy at Santa Barbara High School. So I would like to introduce to you Dan Williams and Daniel Barnett, who will come up and say a few words about their program that they put together for you. Come on up.
Do you care which one we go first?
No.
All right. Thank you for having us tonight. So this one is for us, the Matt Academy, and we're going to talk specifically about what we're doing to increase diversity in the program. And as you guys know, this has been a long-term project for us, and we have seen some significant increases in our diversity over the last 3 to 4 years. And what we have noticed coming into this year is that we are continuing to find some things that are challenges, but we've also seen some very good successes. If you look on the left-hand side there for our demographic data, you will notice at the top that we have nearly doubled the size of our program in the last couple of years. So that has been a big growth for us. In that same time, we have increased the total number of students who are diverse in our program, and also increased the percentages of that. But we're continuing to see some things that are challenges for us, and that's something that we want to continue to address, and that we would like to partner with the school district to try to find some significant ways to continue to improve the diversity numbers within our program. There's definitely some things that we have taken the advice of parents, the school, and the school district on, and we have seen some noticeable changes in the culture of the program, the culture of the community, and how it views the Matt Academy. I think that what has happened is that if you have a program that has been around for about 17 years, it has a sense of how the program is viewed, and it's not easy to change that. And so what we're doing is we're doing some concrete steps to make real changes that will accept kind of a sense in the community that, hey, they're making real changes, they're really wanting to make this happen, and it's going to have to take a little bit of time, but a lot of effort and a lot of deliberate focus to make that happen. So we have seen, like I said, a tremendous increase from about 3 or 4 years ago, when there was literally an embarrassing about 8% of our student population that was diverse, and now we're up to about 28% in most of our classes, and that has happened at the same time that we've doubled the total number of our students. So I think that's actually a pretty significant change in what we've been doing. Some of the challenges that I see that we're seeing coming forward is that this last year, and this is something that we're very serious about addressing, is that as our program has become more diverse, we've noticed that there's a lot of cultural tension within our program. And we want to make sure that we address that. I went to the conference this last summer, and it was a very eye-opening experience for me. We also had an opportunity to talk about a lot of that stuff as a staff and address it, because I think that there's things that we can do in the classroom, because our program is 4 periods a day. The kids are, in classes for most of their day together, 4 or 5 periods a day. It isn't just like they're taking one class a day and they, if they feel alienated, then that's only 1 period and they can flee. But in our program, they're literally spending 4 or 5 hours today. If we don't address the ability to get these kids together, appreciate each other for their cultures, and find ways to get them to connect on a really meaningful level, we're not going to keep them for 3 years. It really has to be addressed at a really foundational level. And that's what we've seen. We've seen kids wanting not to be in the same classes together because that's not what they're used to. And I think that that's a real core issue for us, is really finding ways, and we already started with that this year with our team building trip in the 10th grade. We brought Just Communities in to really work with our kids for an entire day and try to address those issues with our kids and say, these are isms, these are real things that are affecting you in your life, in your school. But in the Matt Academy, this isn't going to be accepted. This isn't going to be something that we tolerate, and it isn't whether it's, sexism or racism, or it doesn't matter what it is. These are real issues that you guys are facing as kids, and what kind of community do you really want to build? So I think we've got our work cut out for us, but I think that we're taking some concrete steps to address real cultural bias within the school system, and especially when we're forcing these kids, not really forcing, but we're giving them an opportunity to come together and saying, you know what, you're choosing to be here, you're going to be here for 3 years, let's make this work, and not only make it work, let's make it flourish. Let's make it great. So, yeah, we've got our work cut out for us, but it's starting to see some real progress.
And do we want to hear both programs from Santa Barbara High and then take questions on that? Is that okay? All right.
Hi, everybody. My name is Daniel Barnett. I'm the director of the Visual Arts and Design Academy at Santa Barbara High, and we are a partnership academy like MAD, so we share the same kind of program architecture. It's 4 classes a day that kids are in together. And we're a long-running program. I think we're about 15 years old, and it's been a successful program. We also, when we started to address a few years ago in a real kind of specific way some of these kind of demographic imbalances that we wanted to kind of work on, we realized that we also had kind of a sort of a legacy of perception. So it's a culture changing thing. And like Dan said, the things that we're dealing with, they really aren't academy issues. They're really cultural, community, local, national, international level kind of challenges. And so, one thing that's been helpful for us in addressing it is just putting our ideas and our strategies down in our diversity plan, which is something that we did a few years ago, and having them in a concrete place has been helpful. I kind of just updated ours in advance of this meeting, and there's about 10 kind of new initiatives on it that I'll share with you that you can see. In fact, can I hand these to you? Just it has a little more information than
we may have it.
This, and I think it. Does it look familiar? I wish I could kind of show everybody. And it was sort of late notice getting it.
Thank you.
Together. But I think that there's some statistics there at the top that actually show some really interesting diversity in the program. I mean, 36% of our kids are socioeconomically disadvantaged. Our average is 44% Latino. And just to be direct, that's kind of the focus at our school. We're wanting to see a closer approximation of the academy enrollment to what our Santa Barbara High School looks like. So we've seen some impressive gains. What's not visible on here, looking back just these 3 years, is the years that came before this, and where we were really at like 18, 22%, like in that case Latino compared to 70%, white, non-Hispanic. And so we've kind of doubled that number basically. And if you look at this last year, the trend has been, like we had an amazing year a couple years ago, if you see 52%. It's gone down to, it's actually 36, I think, now in the 10th grade with the updated data. So 3 years ago, those seniors, that was an amazing year. We see consistency there in the 35 and 36, and so we believe that that's kind of a trend that we can sustain. And I'll just take a second to highlight a couple of the initiatives that are kind of new. They're not really groundbreaking things. They're just, they come out of looking at what we do, why we do it, is it necessary, what are the things that are kind of systemic hurdles to getting the kinds of students that we want into the program. Like we simplified the application from like 5 pages down to a front and a back. That's a hurdle for an at-risk student. Another thing I'll just mention that's sort of we're working on in parallel to this is what the Department of Education is looking at for at-risk students, for partnership academies specifically. That does not have an ethnic component, but that's another thing that we have to work on. How can we not put up a barrier for at-risk students? And the first thing is, like, we need to get them into the program. If the application's hard, they're just not going to do that. The first thing on here, targeted student invitation meetings. We put 106 students on our sort of targeted list that we got from, kind of curated that list from teachers at the junior high, counselors, and we had meetings with every single one of those kids. I would estimate maybe 15% what turned into a viable application. So, I mean, the amount of work that goes into kind of enfolding a student into the program is extensive, but it has produced some results. Outreach at the junior high level, we'd like to do more work with ICANN and create a real kind of pathway from basically kindergarten all the way right up to college, an arts pathway. I was encouraged to kind of hear about the visual and performing arts strategic plan tonight. I think we fit nicely into that. And I'm not going to go into all the other things here. They're in that, and you can take a look at them. But it's just an expression of our kind of sincere interest at looking at what we're doing and trying to find ways to improve. And we're kind of starting to see some improvements. So I'm happy to take questions, too, if there's any specific things.
All right, for both MAD and VADA, questions, comments? Mr. Herron?
Just one question on, or one comment on MAD, and I don't know the answer to it, and I don't really expect the answer tonight necessarily, but I just want to let you know that I did get a call from a classmate of mine, a long time ago classmate, wondering why MAD is charging for team building trips, class trips, etc. And the fee is waived if they donate $2,500. And so I've asked for clarification on, number one, is that under free public education, is that a correct thing to be doing? And two, the documentation sort of indicates that you're using, for, quote, scholarships, some information that might be private information within the school district. So I just want you to know I've asked that question, and I haven't gotten an answer back, but I presume I will. But you're free to comment if you want to, but...
I actually will comment on that because I think it's a very easy answer to answer, which is that our team building trips, like all of our field trips, are field trips. They are optional. They are things that we do offer to all of our students, whether they can afford it or not. There is a fee for them, for those that choose to pay that. And so there is a fee associated with any of our field trips. There is no expectation that those students who could not afford to go, wouldn't be able to go. In fact, anybody that asked to go and said they couldn't afford it or could only afford a portion of it, every single one of them were accepted. So there is no expectation. It was all in the paperwork that was sent out and approved as well. So it was not, I think that what we have to continue to look at is that people's perceptions versus the reality. Sometimes people want to say something that isn't necessarily what's actually written down or expressed to them in word as well. So no, there is no expectation other than the fact that it's a field trip and kids can go if they want to or not.
And I want to be clear that in EDCO, that is one of the items that they've spelled out. We can ask for parents to pay for students, but students must be able to go if they cannot pay.
Yeah, and the reality is that about 30% of our students didn't pay anything to go on that trip, and yet the other families who were contributing made sure that all kids could go. So I think that we fall well within that expectation.
Ms. Edelson?
I have two questions. One, for VADA, the gender gap there is pretty apparent, and I'm wondering if there's been, I know oftentimes girls are more likely to want to do art, and it's playing out in that. And then my second question, and for both academies, how do you find it deals with the culture of the rest of the high school? Because in my experience, there's been the academy and then the rest of the high school, and how are you working on that aspect?
Start with the girl one.
Sure, yeah. This has been a persistent disparity, I guess, and it's kind of been a secondary focus for us. We've been aware of it for quite some time. It has fluctuated a little bit over different years. You know, it was interesting. An art school was recently, it was like the other day was at our program presenting, and they were putting up some statistics about their students, and it was like almost the exact same breakout. And it's anecdotal, but it was an interesting fact for them. And so, yeah, I don't really know how to explain that. we're trying, both in terms of ethnicity and just when we put ourselves forward out into the community to thinking about curriculum design, project design, the kinds of artists that we bring in, we hand pick those because of the product, the outcome, and how, who that might attract. One of the examples is we brought in a street artist, David Flores from LA, a couple of years ago to do a mural on two sides of a Vada building, and that was really deliberate. We wanted to appeal to a certain audience on our campus, and we were going to use that visual kind of impact to create that, and it's become kind of an iconic location on campus. And so that's one of the ways that we're trying to be deliberate about choices that we make and how that might impact attracting certain students to the program. So I hope
that helps. Okay.
I think I would like to follow up with that in the sense that Matt faced the very exact opposite issue early in his years. And what Dan was referring to as far as bringing in mirrors of people who the kids can look up to that look like them, as far as whether they're male, female, Latino, white, whatever, trying to find ways to help all students feel comfortable within the programs and helping them to see that, hey, I can be a male artist, or I can be a Latino digital artist, or whatever that is. I think those are really important pieces for us. I think that that's one of the benefits that we've experienced in MAD with our staff at Santa Barbara High School, is that we have a great Latino staff. So I've been able to bring in a lot of Latino staff into the MAD Academy to provide those types of mirrors. So I think that what Dan is saying is very, very important, because the more that we can find those types of things, again, it's helping to change the culture of how people view, because oftentimes what they say and what they hear isn't the reality on the ground. So I think it's important for us to make sure that we do everything within our power to make sure that all kids feel welcome and accepted and do that type of thing. As far as what your second part of your question was, as far as the academies having a sense of outpaced or outsized identity on the campuses, I think that that's one thing that you're going to continue to see with California Partnership Academies, because kids identify themselves first and foremost as Santa Barbara High School students within these programs, but they have a very strong sense of identity that they belong to the Vada Academy or the MAD Academy, because they spend 4 and 5 hours a day. The vast majority of their time in a day is spent within these academies. So of course they're going to feel this very strong sense of identity, and kids who are not a part of that are going to say, why do they have that strong sense of identity that's somewhat different than my general Santa Barbara High School identity? I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing, as much as it's something that we want to make sure doesn't separate kids on our campuses, which we've both done a great job of creating spaces to bring other kids in.
Well, I think as long as you maintain a similar demographic to the campus,
that's true as well.
You're doing fine. But if it's different,
yes,
then it becomes an issue.
Yes, I agree with that as well.
Thank you.
Ms. Limon?
Wow, this VADA has 29 initiatives and 2 that are in the works for trying to make this program reflective of the school community and also accessible to students. So I have to tell you, I'm impressed. And these are a lot of initiatives, and they're covering everything from data to outreach to counselors to every curriculum, and I'm impressed. So thank you for providing this. And also, I have to say, Dan, you're talking about windows and mirrors, and I'm just like, he went to IEE this summer, because I'm listening to you, and it is about changing the culture, and I'm also impressed. So I think I'm going to have general comments at the very end about diversity in figures because I don't think it applies just to one, but all of them. But I 2 just notable things, absolutely. I mean, you're working hard to definitely engage all students, but also I just hear the language changing about how we think about just access to all of our students. So I wanted to note that.
I'll chime in. I just have 2 quick questions for each of you. One is, did you have more students apply to the program than were able to get in for both of you? Is that true for both of you?
We just had a couple of kids over, and we actually were able to accept them after other kids chose not to participate.
All right, so you were ultimately able to take all comers?
Exactly.
And is that true for you as well, for VADA?
Close. It changes a little bit every year. Late in the most recent years, the AP pathway of the program, there's a college prep and an AP pathway. The AP has attracted, there's a wait list for the AP group, although there's probably 6 people on it. I mean, so most people, I can confidently say most people that want to participate in the academy can do it. And we're still even taking some college prep students. So it's kind of an ongoing process, but it should, really anybody who has that interest, unless there's some huge red flag or obvious, they're able to participate.
Okay, and for both of you, as part of your application process, do you have an interview?
Yes.
And for VADA?
We don't have a face-to-face interview, but I mentioned almost everybody that applies, I talk to in what's basically an interview. It's not a part of the are you in or out process. On our application, there's 4 kind of short answer little questions that is sort of our way of getting to know the student. And they're kind of penetrating questions meant to elicit a kind of a response that will give us some insight into that student. And sometimes we get very basic answers, and sometimes they're fantastic and deep and amazing. And so that's been our way to approach the interview aspect of it.
All right. Thank you. And I will respect Mr. Becchio's time, but also your time, and thank you so much. That's been really helpful. And we'll move on to the next high school, which we can work out, but I also want to caution both the presenters, and it's not really the presenters, it's always more the board members, that we could probably spend 20 to 30 minutes on the next, each of the 2 high schools that are coming up, but we're not going to. And so I just want to be aware of that as they come up, that if we have some questions that, as Ms. Limon said, we could hold to the very end, then that would be fine. Otherwise, if there's some specific ones, just make sure that we're succinct. So, Dr. Dradi, who's next?
Yes, one more bring up Dos Pueblos High School. We have Mary Ziegler, vice principal of Dos Pueblos, and she has brought 2 directors.
Good evening. President Parker, members of the board, Superintendent Cash, assistant superintendents, thank you so much. I'm here representing Dos Pueblos High School on behalf of Principal Carey, and I'd like to introduce 3 amazing educators from Dos Pueblos. First of all, our director of the Dos Pueblos Engineering Academy, Amir Shair, and also the coordinator of our International Baccalaureate Diploma Program, Matt Moran, and our IB counselor, Jeff Sofro. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. So I'll be honest, it wasn't completely clear what we were going to be presenting on. It seemed like there's a large focus on diversity. I'm happy to focus on that or the overall program, but like I said, from our perspective, it was not totally clear what we were going to focus on. Briefly, what I'd like to say, because I'd rather just spend time answering questions, I think that that's going to be more effective, is with regard to diversity, I'd say that the one thing that I'm extremely proud of is our female student enrollment. I don't know whether people really have a sense of what that actually means in the world if you really aren't familiar with engineering, but a lot of places have, schools have like 10 and 12% women. And so when you've got a situation where we're at, hovering back and forth depending on the grade level, right around 50%, that's been a tremendous outreach effort on our part. Our program is, so one of the questions that Kate asked just now, our program is impacted. So in the case of our program, we had over, I think, about 250 folks apply for about 100 spots. So we're in a situation where it's a competitive program. It just has ratcheted up and become competitive. And so we do have an interview process. We look at students' transcripts. We have an application. We interview every student. So what I will say is we go the distance. I mean, I personally am on the interview panel, and we're talking about, I mean, you can do the math on that. It's 250 kids, and we're doing, 10 to 15-minute interviews. So we try to really really devote ourselves to making sure that that process is as effective as possible. With regard to diversity in general, I would say that we've had one thing that I would say that's good that maybe is not totally clear in the data that I think is exciting is that we've managed to increase the percentage of Latino students, which I think is clearly, if you look at our demographics, the most underrepresented based on the Dos Pueblos High School. And we've managed to increase it, but keeping in mind that we're also increasing in students, 204, 271, 335. So in terms of quantity of students that we're actually serving that are Latino, there's a large quantity of students. I get that the percentages, but if you look back when we had 32 students per grade level, we were kind of at around a similar percentage, and we focused a lot on outreach. So what that really is saying is that when we tripled the size of our program, we were able to triple the size of the Latino folks in our program. But ultimately, from our perspective, and this is a challenge that we're working with the district on, and we're working even locally, is it's really about, for our program, there's an academic preparedness component to it. We are a program that was originally a specialized secondary program that was charged with the concept of helping address the lack of STEM students specifically matriculating into college and going into STEM fields. And in that regard, we're doing very well with all of the students that participate. We also are in a situation where we want to be at full capacity, and we want to ensure the students are successful and our curriculum is challenging. And if a kid drops out, we can't replace them because of the integrated nature of our curriculum. So as we're working to interview students, we're really looking at trying to ensure that we can have retention, and our retention is very, very close to 100%. So we're talking about bringing people in as 8th graders, and they stick with the program all the way through their 12th grade, and the retention, we're losing about maybe 4 or 5 kids over the course of 4 years. And a lot of those students are students who move away. They could have a long-term illness or something that prevents them from doing that. So that's where I am, and where I'd like to see us really work is that we've done outreach. We have our own students in the elementary schools working in Lego leagues, working in at the junior highs in the AVID classes, and we as an organization are doing, I believe, I don't know any more we could do in terms of taking our own resources and putting them into the community. But I really think that that we as a group, the district, our program, and we're happy to be a part of this, need to really address what is, to me, the very clear thing is that students from the subgroups that are not represented here are not being prepared as effectively in the K through 8. And for us, when we interview folks, we are hoping that we can get as many people that are really academically prepared, and we're finding that to be the challenging part. And so what I would say, one of the things that I'm interested in doing, and as we looked, I think we're working with that group, the Equal Opportunity Schools, and they're looking at that. We're looking at that in the high school level, and we're looking at that as like identifying folks that are maybe prepared, but we're not identifying them, and they're slipping through the cracks. We aren't putting them in the classes. But I don't know to what degree, because I'm only involved in the secondary part of it, to what degree we're looking at K all the way through 8 and really trying to understand when those disparities start to happen and solving them earlier, rather than when at the time, from our perspective, when we get them in high school, it's just really a challenge. And our program, the complexity of running our program with what we do, and many of you have toured our program and have seen what we're trying to do, it's tough. And even with the range of students that we have, with the amount of support, the extra support we have to provide, it's a challenge. There's no funding for that. We just come in and do that. So that's it in a nutshell. For me, is that I'm proud of the numbers of females, and I would really like to see a district-wide effort that I am feeling is going to lead to tangible results, so that we could really solve the problem at the front end, at the beginning, in the pre-K and the K through 8. Because I think we aren't having a problem with people wanting to do it or not wanting to do it. We aren't seeing a lack of interest. We're seeing folks deciding not to do it because they look and they go, I don't think I'm academically prepared for this, which is very different than I want to do this. I see people, we go and we present, and they say, man, I just think this program's not for me. And we still encourage them to apply and give them an interview, and we want to see, and just say, don't prejudge yourself. We really want to see. Maybe you'll be able to be in this program. So, that's that's kind of what I've
Thank
got
you.
for our
Okay.
program.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And International Baccalaureate, and then we will take
Okay.
questions on that.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Moran. I'm the IB coordinator at Dos Pueblos. This is Jeff Soffro to my left. He's the IB coordinator. I will be honest and say that I don't have pointed comments for you tonight. And I will tell you that this is my first year as IB coordinator. So to follow up the three previous presenters that have a long history with their programs, I just don't have the experience in the coordinator role that they do. This is my 5th year in IB as a teacher, and my first year as coordinator. Last year, I shared the role with Karen Beckstead. What I can tell you tonight, though, is that I'm excited for some of the possibilities that I think we have. Our program is growing. We have roughly 255 students in the grades 11 and 12. It is predominantly female-dominated. Jeff and I and Sean Carey have talked about ways that we can try to draw more males into the IB program. But it is growing, and there's really 2 ways that students can do the IB program: the full diploma and take all of their courses as IB courses, or as certificate courses and take anywhere from 1 to 4. So we really feel like there's a lot of room for growth in the area of 1 to 4 courses. Other presenters have talked about an application process. We do have an application process, but as of right now, there's no barriers to it, and there's no doors against students applying and getting in. We don't have kind of a hard count of a cutoff line for students. This year, we have 26 full diploma candidates that are starting out as juniors, which is the highest number we've had. So managing some of the internal components of the assessments of the IB program is a lot of work with 26 full diploma students. So we're not sure what it would look like beyond that, but we're open to the possibility of having more than 26. Some of the notes through the document. Last year, for the 10th straight year, our students outperformed the world average in 7 out of 9 categories of classes that we offer. So they're performing very, very well. They're continuing to get into the most prestigious universities. Areas of growth that I'm excited about would be expanding kind of the IB logo and the IB name out of Dos Pueblos. I think there's a couple things we can do within the community in trying to partner with businesses and partner with local nonprofit organizations to give students an outlet for community service opportunities or internships over the summer. So some inroads with that. Also, I've met with the principal and IB coordinator at Harding Elementary, and we're going to try to partner with them a little bit and see what we can do from Dos Pueblos and working with those kids. There's a couple things that we've talked about, maybe having our kids visit Harding once in a while, or trying to use technology and Skype in with them or FaceTime in with them with some of the technology that we now have. We have a school tour at Harding planned for next month. So one thing that they have noticed is that as an IB primary years program, they get kids that leave Harding and think they're done with IB. We get kids that enter DP and have never heard of IB before. So we want to try to figure out ways that we can bridge that gap. So yeah, to sum up, I'm excited to be in this role. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of the past history to
That's all
answer
right.
some of those pointed questions for you.
All right, so board members, quick comments or questions that are specific to this that you don't want to ask the next groups. So Mr. Herron and then Dr. Paz.
I would like to just point out that there are revised cover sheets for both of these items. And specifically in regard to the Engineering Academy, if you can shoot back to that one, both of them have revised demographics. And the original we have on the agenda, it has as white 76%. Scroll down. Has 77.3% white. I looked at that and I said, something's wrong with that number. And you add up all the numbers, it's 116%. So now in the revised, that number is 61.2%. And there's a secondary category of a percent of 2 or more racial groups. I hope that the revised one gets onto the board website in place of these two.
Absolutely.
But
I'd like to just briefly comment on that so it doesn't seem like the Engineering Academy doesn't know how to get to 100%. So The data as it's presented, there's two ways that our data is collected. I was alerted today about there's a California Department of Education method of collection, and there's a federal collection. The form of the federal form is what supersedes everything, and that's the way data is collected. And because of the way it's collected, we would have been doing what we felt was data manipulation by basically subtracting out the percentage of white, because race is now identified separately from ethnicity, and as a result, you're basically looking at two different data sets, and so we didn't want to do that. But through talking with the district's new person, I forgot her name.
Dr. Guillermo Juan.
Dr. Guillermo Juan. So I talked to her today, and she basically educated me on the whole issue of, look, there's this alternative way to do it, and it's okay, and we can actually, from my perspective, change the data. But the data is what. So the data that you're seeing here reflected is with the new 62%, I guess, is the more appropriate. But I think the number that is still standing there is the 17% for the Latino. It was just being double counted with white because of the way that race is addressed on that form.
Thank you. Dr. Paz.
Thank you.
So I know a number of times when academies have come, either in my time to apply or do a presentation, we've talked about the academies reflecting the community, and you bring up a point that I was going to bring up myself, which is we're still dealing with what you're seeing present when people apply to Dos Pueblos Engineering Academy, and there lies the problem. We're expecting diversity, but seeing that some students can't simply apply and make it and meet the minimum criteria, or they themselves are going to opt out. So I think we have a lot of work in terms of, the previous presentation, looking at LCAP, looking at our fellow board member, Ms. Limon, mentioning and looking at the academies and looking at data. That's actually one of the things we want to do as a school district. We need to be involved in that at an earlier point in time, as you're pointing out as well. And one of the points that I made was we need to look at pre-K data as well. So there needs to be a clear understanding, not only from people in the district, site administrators, but the general public, of what that pathway looks like, so that before they hit your program, people have a clear understanding. This is what it's going to take for me to get from this point to that point. And whether it's your Dos Pueblos Engineering Academy or any of the academies that we have in the school district, to meet that requirement and to be successful. And so I think we have quite a bit of discussing to do in terms of that. And I just want to echo your points of well taken, and I feel the same way. We need a bigger discussion about that.
I'd like to add a comment to that, because I think that the reason this happens, this is my perspective, and this is just a perspective. I think that when you've got 1st through 6th grade, folks are being promoted to the next grade. They may be totally appropriately promoted, but we don't see in the underlying that really you've got a disparity between students that keeps growing over time, because what we have is we have a grade marker for them. And then as soon as they get into 7th grade, what we end up with is the first clear time where we start to really differentiate students. We start to say, you're appropriate for this math, and you're appropriate for this math. The symptoms of that happened in the K through 6, but because of the way that we just look at them in this very blanket approach as the grade, we start to see the symptoms in the 7th and 8th. And what I'm seeing is students start to fall apart effectively in 7th and 8th because of that experience, because of they're coming from this thing where they've been judged in one way, and now there's this very obvious thing, and then they look and say, I just can't keep up with this system, and then that just starts to propagate. So it's my hope that we can really, one of the things that we had talked about is, can we start looking at kids in 5th and 6th that we're identifying as could, like you said, look to our program and say, I could do this, identify those students, and maybe see if we could do, I mention this all the time, I think we talked about replicating our program. I view this as an existence proof now. Like, I don't know whether we're replicable, but I'm interested in, can we create an existence proof to show what it takes to grab these students that are in 6th, 5th, 6th grade that are doing well or doing okay, and what do we need to do to bridge that gap where we know you have this dramatic drop-off in the 7th, 8th, 9th grade. And I think that if we could figure out, with taking a cohort of students, and this is going to take I can't do everything, you know what I mean? But this is my proposal, is if we could get a group of people to support some small set of students, we could identify through those students, like a case study basis, working with the EOP concept, everything we're doing, and be able to really identify what are the barriers. So as these students in this test case start to run up against these barriers and we provide the mentorship, we start to actually take real data, like this is the barrier they're seeing, these are the things they're seeing. And then what we could learn from that is there a broader support program that we could put in place to help bridge this gap? And so that's the type of thing that I would like to see us doing, and I would like to, offer up as an idea, because that's kind of the way we run our program. We just throw everything at it to try to learn as much as we can.
All right, thank you. And
I just want one brief comment. I'm
all right,
sorry.
super brief.
Board members are aware that all 3 of our high schools have students that come to them from different feeder school districts. I have to be very frank and tell you, DP, it's the majority come from a K-6 environment that's not governed by the Santa Barbara Unified School District. And as a result of that, unique efforts have to be made with Goleta Union School District, and they do a great job. This isn't about them not preparing their students, but one of the things that is going to happen is we are going to have some joint meetings with the elementary school principals from Goleta Union School District. The first is going to be at the Dos Pueblos Engineering Academy, so those principals can see for themselves and understand what that's about. So I think we need to, I agree for all of them. I mean, it kind of goes DP, San Marcos, and Santa Barbara as far as the percentage of district kids. We need to have a greater tie-in to our feeder districts about what the expectations are to ensure that we prepare kids for these possible experiences. So that's my not so brief comment.
Real brief. Is the DP Engineering Academy doing any mentoring or outreach to the elementary?
Yes.
Okay.
So we do Lego League, we do Avid in the 7th and 8th, but that got harder to do because we used to be able to have our kids leave during 5th and 6th period to do that, but as the schedule tightened up, the master schedule has gotten tighter with the budget as it is in California, and our students don't have as much flexibility. So they might have a free period in the middle of the day, whereas they used to have a free 5th or 6th, and they could go to Goleta Valley, drive themselves there, and we would actually support them for mentoring. So that's been a little bit more challenging, but we had a presence in Avid, presence in the elementary schools and the Lego leagues, and then we have a presence even on our local campus where we go and we do the tutoring as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, San Marcos.
Dan Garski.
And I would ask Dos Pueblos to not leave, because we may have questions at the end that come up.
Good evening. I'm here representing Principal Ed Behrens, who's also at the conference in Anaheim. And we have our 3 academy directors here to talk about the academies tonight. Alex Sheldon, in charge of our Entrepreneurship Academy. And thank you, Alex, for not leaving for the Anaheim conference yet and for being here. Marcine Newman for the Health Academy, and Eric Nilsson for the Apple Academy. So, Alex.
Good evening. I will try to be concise as possible with this. So I'd like to share with you just a little about our academy, which is a fairly new academy. We are in our 2nd year. We just started our 2nd cohort. And the goal of our academy is to prepare students to either A, start their own business upon completion of the academy, and or pursue a business-related college degree. And the way we attack those goals is through our coursework and activities that the students participate in. If you look at the demographics of our academy, we are 49% identified as white, 37% as Latino or Hispanic, and then 12% come from 7 other subgroups. And one of the things I think to note on here is what a change percentage-wise just 1 or 2 students can make in terms of your overall demographics. Next year, we will have 103 students in our academy because we'll be adding 1 more class with 35 students, and each additional year, we'll add 35 students. So we'll always be between 100 and 105 students with our academy. Our goal is to match our school demographics like we've talked about before, and this is still a work in progress for us. I have identified a few ways that have been successful for us recruiting a diverse academy with our demographic subgroups, and we're going to continue on those, and then I have a few things that I would like to add, but currently all freshmen at San Marcos High School get a presentation from me, possibly more than one, so they're aware of the academy. And one of the things that I've really tried to work on is having as many students apply as possible. And I've identified students from our subgroups, potentially underrepresented students who meet our minimum requirements. I'll have one-on-one meetings with the students explaining to them our academy structure and see if it's something they're interested in, business. And I found that that's been something for many students, just hearing someone say, wow, you've done really well during your freshman year of school, and we have a program that you might be interested in, seems to be something that students really appreciate, and we've had a lot of students apply to our academy from that. Something else that I'd like to do moving into the future is establish some type of entrepreneurship or business club at the junior high schools. And I have one of our teachers that we added this year has worked closely with the Latino business group at UCSB. And the idea that we've thrown around and would like to implement is starting these types of clubs at La Colina and La Cumbra, who are our feeder schools, and having them work with these UCSB students. And so I think that's something else that will potentially give us a larger pool of diverse applicants. One other thing I'd just like to note at the end of this is we have worked really hard this past year to get A through G approval for one of our courses, and I just got the notification yesterday that we were approved for our marketing class for G approval. And then we've also added a class with our partnership through Santa Barbara City College. We're offering Finance 100 now, which is a G approved class as well. So I welcome your questions.
Thank you. Next up.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you very much. I'm here to talk about the Health Careers Academy, and we have about 100 students, give or take a few students each year. Similar to Alex's academy, we're 10th, 11th, and 12th, so we try to have 30 to 35 students in each of those classes. One of our goals, which has always been a goal, is to be ethnically balanced, and we really like to represent the population and the demographics of our school climate. This year we dropped down a little bit in our Hispanic population. We had a slight increase in our Asian population and a slight increase in our white population. And I think I was looking at some of my last academy reports that I give to you guys, and one of the big reasons I believe is we had a 60.6% Hispanic Latino graduating class that we just lost last year, and then we also had a slightly smaller than normal incoming Latino class. And so as a result, we really are starting to look a little more about how we can outreach within the community and actually at our high school campus. We actually had to increase our GPA to a 3.0. We used to be a 2.5, but we've really had to push the past couple years to build our pre-med advanced care pathway, and so we've added some classes. And I think we focused on that, and we kind of lost some of what we have historically been so successful with. And so I've set up some ideas that I want to try to incorporate is if students are slightly below a 3.0, they still need to have a fairly decent GPA because they have to have a strong academic skill set to really be successful. But we thought about creating a contract, creating academic mentors within our program, requiring some type of maybe after-school tutoring depending on the students' transportation needs. The other thing I do is I present in all the 9th grade health science classes, and so I thought I'd target that demographically somewhat and maybe pick some students based on the teacher's recommendation as to interest and potential level to be successful in the program, and then individually talk to them. We do have an application process. We do not interview every student. We do interview the students that go into the certified nursing program, and that's during the senior year. But what I do is I sit down with the other health academy teachers and we review the applications, and we also use teacher recommendations from the students, from their ninth grade teachers. The other idea we have is I have a HOSA club. It's a career technical student organization, and so we do a lot of things on campus, and so we thought it might be nice to have some lunchtime activities and informational sessions with the ninth graders to let them know, kind of what they need to be successful in our program. And I also think that if we had a bigger applicant pool, we would much easily be able to target our demographics that we want. Because last year, for instance, we had, our demographics were 41% Hispanic, 48% white, 9% Asian, and then 2% other. So we did drop down a little bit this year, but I think it's something we can definitely catch, and we really do strive. Our goal with the Health Academy is really to be ethnically diverse, because that's what our community needs for healthcare workers. We need a lot of bilingual healthcare workers. And yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Apple.
Thank you for having us tonight. My name is Eric Nielsen. I'm the director of the Apple Academy. Apple stands for the Accelerated Academic Program for Leadership and Enrichment. Our academy was founded on really the three pillars of the college admissions process, which are high academics, rigor in academics, focus on testing to get into four-year institutions, and then what's now become a really large element of the program, which is extracurricular development. And for us, the focus is leadership and service to the community. I have to admit as well, I kind of got late notice on this, but I do recognize that from the other speakers that you want us to discuss our progress with ethnic diversity. We, as you see, have stayed right around 23% is our total over the last 4 years. This is our fifth year of the Apple Academy. Last year we graduated our first class. We are unique in our academic pathway because we're on the block schedule, and we're able to manipulate that four-year pathway so as to maximize the likelihood of four-year college admissions. As Admir said, the challenge we face is getting students to commit to such a rigorous four-year pathway. Some of the things that we've done in the past to promote students to apply to the academy are a number of information nights, presentations at all four schools. We work closely with the counselors at La Cumbre and La Colina to seek out underrepresented students, speak with them, walk them through the application process. We go to Core Knowledge at La Cumbre. We've also I received a grant from the Mosier Foundation to really, in some ways, address what Amir was talking about, because I see it with our academy as well, that we really want to see students prepared for the pathway. So our grant was to design a cyber tutorial program. The concept being that a lot of these kids, these high-achieving kids, are super busy and they're impacted in a big way by all their extracurricular activities and what have you. But if you can tutor online, then you can create time for these kids to do so in between what they're doing as far as their activities. So the concept started as a pilot. We worked with Vieja Valley. We're expanding it this year to Hollister, to El Camino, and hopefully Adams as well. So we're trying to get in all those schools. And because we have Royal Time, which is this extended day, we're able to do some work during the school day. So that's going to be our next push, is to have tutoring kids during the school day. So that's another thing. We're hoping that not only tutoring, but also the mentorship piece. What I've seen in a program, I did a pilot program years ago called Summa Ed. I don't know if anybody remembers this, but it was a similar concept. And the connection between the kid, the young student, the elementary school kid, and the high school student was amazing, and there was a lot of really neat progress made there. So working on that program as well. We have shadows. We have, a lot of information that we put out about the academy, but that's pretty much where we are.
All right. Thank you. All right. This is, we'll start with any just specific to San Marcos at this point. I'll just have a quick checking in on entrepreneurship and Apple. Do you both do interviews as part of your application process?
We do not.
You do not, and?
We do not, but that's something we identified after our application process last year, where we had over 80 applicants, and choosing 35 was very difficult, that we're going to add that this year.
Okay. Board members, general comments and questions? And DP, you may get pulled up here or you may not. Dr. Paz.
I think one of the things that we see on all this is not just, one of the things a couple people said, we're looking at demographics. Yeah, we're looking at demographics because we'd love to see our academies reflective of our communities, but I think it's a deeper issue that a number of people have talked about, the deeper issue of how do we prepare students to be successful in academies, and even when they apply, that they're accepted, but even that they have the ability to apply. I think that's the deeper issue that's present within all of the conversations we've had, the questions we've had. It does take much more than just individual efforts on your part, which I do applaud each of you doing what you have done up to this point in time. But I think as a school district, we really need to take the time to really look at what is successful in each of your programs. Can we take that particular piece and apply it to other programs and share those pieces? I know many of you probably do look to each other to see what has or has not worked. But I would suggest as a board that one of the things that we need to do is, one, begin to look at data, look at that deeper question that I think a number of people have started to look at. What does that particular student look like, and what are the courses that that particular student took in order to apply, in order to be ready for each of your academies? What would that pseudo student look like, and get to that point in time? Begin to, as Dr. Cash has said, begin to work with our feeder school districts when appropriate. So that's two things. And then the third point is that as a district, I think we need to not just take the single-handed approach of just looking at each of your academies singularly. We have to take them as a whole. And I think as a board, we need to really take that next step and insist as our school district that we begin to take that approach to address what is present in our schools, feeder schools, and our own school district, to say, can we do better? Can we prepare students in a better way? Can we be a little more systemic rather than sort of a gunshot approach that each of you is sort of representing? Not disrespectfully in that regard, but we're not doing it as a district. You're doing it as individual programs. We've seen sort of snippets of here and there. We're doing this, we're doing that, we're doing this. But I think in order to really fully address a lot of the concerns which I've heard tonight, it's going to take a district approach to do this. And although I applaud each of you for all the work that you have done and would encourage you to continue to do that, I think what I see as a school board member is that we need to do more as a district to really address what we're all kind of seeing, the elephant in the room that needs to be really taken on head on. Thank you for all the work that you do, though.
Ms. Edelson?
I appreciate all you've done, all the academies, and I think at the end of the day, I'll have parents ask me, they're considering different academies, whether it's Dos Pueblos Engineering or the high school, any academy in our district, and I think what we're trying to achieve is that every morning the child wakes up, student wants to go to school because they are really passionate about something going on. And it's very heartwarming to hear all these things because it's success for each child. And I think whether that's health science, engineering, art, we want enough selection so that students can find that passion. And thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Ms. Limon?
So I'll start off by saying that my position really for the academies has been that I am supportive of the academies, and I think that what I want to see out of them is that they're accessible to students who want to be part of them. I do think that it's important to work towards not a magic number, but to work towards something that looks or feels like the school. So I don't think there is a magic number. There will never be a magic number. And I come from a background where professionally I have had to reach a magic number. When you have a federal grant, 66% first-gen low income, and low income, not or. I mean, it's difficult work to recruit. So I recognize how much goes into that. And that's why I say that we're not looking, I think, as a district for a magic number, but we want programs like this to be accessible to students. I think on the diversity piece, I don't know that at least I was expecting that that was going to be the bulk or the core of the conversation for the academies. I think it's been different in years past when folks present, and that's perfectly fine. I think I welcome this conversation. But on that piece, I do look at good faith effort, because as was recognized today, there's more there than only recruitment efforts. There's more there that has to do with articulation, that has to do with classes offered, that has to do with changing a culture. And I would agree that there's, sometimes we look at our community as well, and our community reflects the segregation that we see in our schools. And that's a problem, because it's hard to just have a magic potion that will fix it. I think access and, again, reflection of the school is important. I also think that I recognize the role of K through 8 as far as preparing students and the work that goes there. And I just want to be careful, though, because I do work at UCSB, and sometimes I hear colleagues then just blame the whole K through 12 system. And I have to remind folks that we're not in a business of blaming each other. We're in a business of working together. These are all of our students. And so I definitely feel there is a role that the district can play. There is something to be said about the fact that through every grade level, there's so much research and documentation that we are losing students. I mean, that's not even debatable. But I also think that it doesn't take our responsibility away to make these good faith efforts to do something. And on that line, in the past, what I've heard as a board member is the word competition come up for academies, that that academies are competing with each other, and I worry, because I feel that we lose an opportunity. As I looked at VADA's strategy, I have to say that part of me is like, oh my gosh, I hope they're all meeting and talking about these 29 strategies that VADA is doing, and I know that they're not the only ones doing strategies. I mean, I've been to several of the events that you've had as academies, the recruitment events, and there's some really successful things going on. So I hope that there is an opportunity for all of you as leaders of academy to share these ideas. I think when one academy wins, we all win. I don't want to see these go away. And so I hope that happens. I know I went to the showcase this year, and it was the first time, and again, the word competition came up, but in the end, the students didn't know half of what I knew, and I was so excited to see how excited they were getting about some of the information that was being shared. And so I think that that's important to keep in mind. So I thank you for the work you do. I know that you do this above and beyond your responsibilities, and it goes into your evening hours and your weekend hours, and I definitely feel supportive of these initiatives and efforts.
And Mr. Herron.
Well, I'll just comment. I went to the showcase also, and I've really watched these academies over the years, and it's amazing. It's amazing what each of them does. I don't really look at it as competition, because they all provide something different for our kids. And I think that's the beauty of it, is that there's opportunities for our students to do special things at all of our high schools. And I just want to see them continue and be successful, and give the opportunities to more and more kids all the time. I think it's fantastic.
And I'll say that, of course, our policy on programs of choice and schools of choice, has a number of metrics that we ask those programs to meet. And the reason that we focus on this particular area of demographics is because you all are doing so well in the other areas. And so, of course, we're all focusing on the place where we really want to see improvement. So I do applaud you, especially on the academics. The students are doing so well. It's really impressive. And a lot of you are doing great, innovative things. My concern, and this does come back to being a district concern, is that, you know, we've watched the application process and the variations in the application processes and the variations in how each program recruits. And I think that there's probably a time now where, and it's past time really, where we need to do maybe some outside analysis, where maybe we bring in an outside consultant who looks in and says, you know, we all have opinions about what the barriers are in these interview processes, and also in terms of getting an applicant pool that's appropriate. But I don't feel that any one of us is actually like a national expert in it, and things don't change. And I actually am concerned about the interview process because as a public school district, I worry every time, you know, obviously each program has its standards for what students need to be able to do to get in, but then beyond that, how subjective is that interview process? And, you know, when I look at the UCs and Cal States and city colleges, you know, their selective programs, they don't do interviews. And so I worry that our teachers and our program heads are not trained in how to make sure that that is not a subjective process, that you start with an environment that is open and fair. There may be things going on that we don't recognize, and it's none of our faults. We're not experts in it. And so I think that it's time for us to have somebody from the outside come and take a look and say, look, you know, what at the district level, each program is unique, but where at the district level should we put in some expectations that the programs are the same so that they are open to all the students in the district that are able to, you know, that qualify in fundamental ways for those programs. So that's really something that I'd look to for the future. And if there are no other comments on that, thank you so much. And I wish that, you know, that we had more time to spend with you, but you're all ready to go to bed, I'm sure. So thank you, and we will see you again, obviously, in the future, and good luck.
Thank you all for coming tonight, staying till 10:02.
And with that, we are going to return to consent items designated for discussion, and there were 3 items that were pulled by Mr. Herron, starting with E2. This is approval of staff travel, out-of-state travel, and/or expenses in excess of $3,000, dated February 16th through the 20th.
Well, Dr. Ramirez isn't here, so maybe my questions probably aren't going to be answered completely, and I'll try to make it fast. The first one that I asked to be pulled was the 18 staff members going to Orlando, Florida. And the background paper says that SELPA basically made the decision of how to spend some extra money that we got. My question was, were we given any options, or was that a directive from SELPA, or did we have a choice of spending that money some other way?
We did not.
So SELPA said, here's what you're going to do with this $50,000 or whatever it is?
Correct.
Okay. So as a follow-up to that, I would at least ask that these 18 staff people somehow come back and share with each other the information they gather from this session. You know, the image of 18 of our staff people being gone for 4 days at a quote convention is not a real good thing for the public to see. In my company, when I asked, is the convention going to be the same when they change names, the answer was, we don't have conventions, we have business meetings. And there's something to that. And there's 1,000, I looked on the website, there's 1,000 different sessions being offered at this conference. So our staff people will have a heck of a lot of options. I hope they go separately to separate things, and I hope they get together and share information when they get back. Since we didn't have any choice, I think it's a good idea that we're doing it.
They will be sharing information while they're there. They are organized as to what they're going to go see. They'll be meeting throughout the time that they're there and talking about what learning they're having and how they'll implement anything or how it'll impact their work here in Santa Barbara.
That would be my expectation, so I'm happy to hear that.
Yes, that would be mine as well.
And I would like to see some type of report back as to, what they gained out of it and what is being accomplished by it. So fine. The second one, unless there's any other questions.
No, but do you want to make a motion on it?
Oh, I'll move that we approve the staff travel out of state, item number, what is it?
E2.
E2.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Aye. That passes unanimously. E3.
The second one concerns me because I just a couple questions. It says in the cover letter, from a funding standpoint, and this is the approval of the contract with, in essence, Wendy Morosky, Dr. Wendy Morosky. The cover letter says it will be funding not to exceed $110,000. In the actual contract, it says we will pay the contractor $110,000 for services rendered. But nowhere in this contract does it say what those services are. We've done a lot of contracts with people, but in most cases it spells out what our expectation is. And so my question is twofold. One, are we paying $110,000, some $8,000 or $9,000 a month, and will we get a bill for $9,000 a month, or are we paying her for actual services that she's going to provide when she's in town or out of town giving us help? And so is it up to or is it $110,000? And second question, why isn't there anything in this document about what we're getting for the $110,000?
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Herron. I wish I could have had that question beforehand, because Helen Rodriguez asked permission to not attend tonight's board meeting. Since I didn't have any questions regarding her agenda items, I excused her, and she's the best person to be able to answer that question. So we can certainly get those answers to the questions, because I know it's very specifically detailed as to what she's going to do, when she's going to be here, who she's working with, how long she's going to be working with them, all very specifically outlined. And I can get that to you, and I know that she knows it.
Good. I'd like to have a copy of that, yes.
Here's a question. Is this time sensitive, or do we need to take action on this right now?
I'm not certain if it's time sensitive or not. So
I believe it is. Like I said, without giving specifics, we actually have on our professional learning calendar throughout the year where she'll be engaged with her staff. She already had trainings, 2 days of trainings last week. And so she has teams of people coming to work with their staff. So I believe it is time sensitive.
Good. And I'd say just for the future in contracts, it seemed to have something spelled out of what we're getting for our dollars. So I'll let somebody else make this motion.
I'll make the motion, but I will echo the same concerns as my fellow board member, because I'm accustomed to seeing a contract with the scope of work attached to it, and it's how I do work at my workplace, and so I would expect that. And in the future, I would definitely expect that to come to the board in that manner. So, but I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I will second it. It looks like on the, I just want to mention, it looks like it's a E1 here. On this, it's looking like it's E3. Am I missing something?
It's
Hold
E3
on,
on
I
the
can't-
agenda.
It's E3 on the printed agenda.
But on the online, it looks like it's E1.
And I'm sorry, I can't get onto that right now. So we will call it
It's
E3,
E3.
because
It's E3.
that's the official agenda that's printed.
All right.
And it's the approval of the agreement for professional learning services between Santa Barbara Unified School District and 2Teach LLC. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passed unanimously, but I will also point out what Dr. Cash said, that if we have questions like this, that it's important to get them to him ahead of time so that he can be sure that the right personnel are here to answer them.
She wasn't feeling well, so along with Ms. Chate, I don't know if you noticed, but she wasn't here
We
as well.
always notice that. Item E6.
A simple question on this for Dr. Christensen. On the work out of class, there's a whole long list of paraeducator twos that are working out of class. Can you tell me exactly what that means in this instance with so many?
I can't tell you. I'll have to research it and Friday. I don't want to guess.
Okay. And the second question is, when somebody works out of class and they're going from a para 1 to a para 2, are they being paid at the para 1 level, or are they being paid at the para 2 level that they'll be working in?
If they're working out of class, they're going to be paid at a higher level.
So they'll be paid at the out-of-class level. Okay, those are my two questions. I would like the answer to why is this group working out of class? There's an awful lot of them. I'll move approval of the item E6, Human Resources Recommendations.
There's a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously. And that moves us on to coming events. I don't know if there's anything else that we need to talk about. Dr. Cash listed a number at the beginning of the meeting. And then there's K, future agenda items.
I would like to mention on future things, the October 29th meeting, special board meeting on special education, I think is going to be starting at 4 o'clock, not 3 o'clock.
Correct. So,
Yeah,
if you notice under item M, the special board meeting that's on special education is going to be 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. instead of 3 to 6, and it will not be at the district administration office. It is going to be probably at one of our high school libraries, and that will be determined soon. All right. And if there is no objection at this point, I will go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Can you send us the list?